Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we sleep near New York Harbor during the Great Blizzard of 1888, where snow climbs the windows, foghorns moan across black water, and the proud modern city suddenly remembers it is only human. Imagine the harbor lamps blurring into pale halos, the masts creaking like tired bones, and the cold air smelling of salt, coal smoke, wet rope, and horse breath. What happens when New York, noisy old New York, is told to hush by the weather? What do people do when ferries stop, wires snap, streets vanish, and even the harbour seems to lose its way? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And while you are getting comfortable, comment your location and your local time, because somewhere out there, someone else is listening in the dark too. Now, dim the lights, you draw your blanket closer, and let the harbour night gather around you. The year is 1888, and New York is not yet the forest of towers you know from pictures and postcards. It is lower, darker, smokier, and louder, with church steeples, counting houses, crowded tenements, ferry slips, warehouses, and piers pressing toward the restless water. The harbour is the city's breathing chest, rising and falling with tides, cargo, voices, bells, gulls, and steam. You are near the waterfront as Sunday, March 11th, settles into evening. The air feels damp rather than dangerous, the sort of March dampness that sneaks under collars and makes wool smell faintly sour. A soft rain has been falling, tapping awnings and darkening cobblestones. The horses in the street flick their ears and stamp at puddles. Their harness leather gives off a warm animal smell beneath the sharper odour of coal smoke. People do not yet know they are standing on the edge of a legendary storm. Weather forecasting exists, certainly, and the United States Signal Service tries its serious best. But the science is young, the instruments are scattered, and storms still keep many of their secrets. New Yorkers grumble about bad weather, as New Yorkers have always grumbled about bad weather, with deep feeling and limited patience. The sky does not look polite, but it does not yet look historic. You find yourself in a modest room not far from the harbour, perhaps above a tavern, a boarding house, or a warehouse office. The floorboards are uneven under your feet, the window glass feels cold when your fingers touch it, and the pane trembles whenever a cart rolls past outside. Somewhere below, men talk over supper in low voices. A stove ticks softly as metal expands and contracts. It is a companionable little sound. Outside, the harbour continues its usual labour. Ferries move between Manhattan, Brooklyn, Jersey City, Staten Island, and other points along the Great Watery Rim. Tugboats puff stubbornly through the channels. Sailing vessels and steamships lie at piers with cargo waiting to be handled. Barrels, crates, cotton bales, sugar, coffee, coal, hides, and mail move through this world with muscular regularity. New York Harbor is not scenery tonight. It is an engine. You can smell that engine through the damp walls. Salt water carries its clean bite beneath everything else. Tar rises from ropes and pilings. Coal smoke hangs in the air like dark velvet. Fish, mud, wet wood, and spilled grain add their modest opinions. It is not exactly pleasant. It is honest. By late evening, the rain begins to change its mind. First it thickens, turning colder and more deliberate. Then it taps the glass with a faint, dry whisper. You lean closer and see the first flakes appearing in the lamplight. They do not fall dramatically yet. They drift with a sly little confidence, as though they have been invited and intend to stay. A man downstairs laughs at the snow, because people often laugh at the beginning of trouble. Someone says it will be gone by morning. Someone else says March storms are always fussy, like old uncles at dinner. The comment earns a tired chuckle. Outside, a horse snorts, and the sound seems oddly loud in the narrowing air. The storm forming over the northeastern United States is a fierce meeting of weather systems, cold inland air and moisture from the Atlantic colliding with miserable enthusiasm. The blizzard will become one of the most famous in American history, especially across New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Snowfall in parts of the region will reach shocking depths, while winds heap it into drifts that swallow doors, windows, and entire stretches of street. For now, though, it is only beginning. You do not know the numbers. You only know the feel. The room grows colder. The stove is fed again, and the iron door opens with an orange pulse. Heat brushes your face, then fades back into the corners. Your blanket smells faintly of laundry soap, dust, and many previous winters. It scratches your wrist when you tuck it tighter. Outside, the flakes multiply until the lamp across the street seems to float inside a white, breathing cloud. The harbour sounds begin to change as well. Usually, the waterfront speaks in layers: wheels, hooves, shouts, bells, chains, dock planks, water slapping pilings, and gulls complaining like unpaid clerks. Tonight, those sounds soften. Snow settles on rooflines, ropes, carts, and barrels. It cushions the city's hard edges. Even New York can be muffled, apparently. A rare miracle. Still, the harbour refuses silence. From the water comes a low steam whistle, distant and mournful. Then another answers from farther away. Somewhere a bell rings, not merrily, but with workmanlike concern. You cannot see the vessels clearly now. You hear them instead, hidden presences moving in a whitening dark. Each sound arrives blurred, as if wrapped in wool. The wind begins with a push against the window. Then it gathers itself and pushes again, harder. The old frame complains. A thin draught slides across the floor and touches your ankles. You place a folded coat near the gap beneath the door. It helps a little, which is sometimes all civilization can promise. Snow now strikes the glass almost sideways. The flakes are no longer gentle. They arrive in slanting streams, bright where they cross the lamp glow and invisible beyond it. You stare out and lose track of the street. The buildings across the way become vague blocks of shadow. The cobblestones disappear under a pale covering that thickens with unsettling speed. New York in 1888 depends on things that look strong until weather tests them. Elevated railway lines run above the streets, iron structures carrying commuters through smoke and noise. Horse-drawn streetcars follow their tracks below. Telegraph and telephone wires web the air, stretched from poles and rooftops like proof that the age of instant communication has arrived. Modernity is very proud of itself. The blizzard, rude guest that it is, will soon offer corrections. A mainstream fact sits quietly inside the storm's first hours. The blizzard helped push New York toward putting utilities underground. The city's overhead wires were vulnerable to wind, ice, and heavy snow. When they failed, communication and power of coordination failed with them. The storm did not invent the idea of underground systems, but it gave the argument a very cold, very persuasive voice. For now, the wires outside still hum when the wind presses them. It is a strange sound, not musical exactly, but tense and thin. You imagine messages moving through them, business orders, family news, railway instructions, newspaper reports, all travelling above the street like invisible birds. The snow gathers on each line, the wind tightens. The birds are nervous. Downstairs, footsteps cross the floor. A door opens, and cold air rushes up the stairwell. Someone stamps snow from boots. You hear muttering, then the scrape of a chair. The people below are discussing the ferries. One man says the harbour will be ugly by midnight. Another says tug captains know their business. A third says, with great certainty, that no weather can stop commerce for long. History has a soft spot for confident men. You sit near the window, not quite ready to sleep. The harbour draws your attention even when you cannot see it. In fair weather, it holds reflections of lamps and stars. Tonight it holds confusion. The tide continues its deep movement beneath the snow, indifferent to human schedules. Ice is not yet the chief menace, but spray, freezing surfaces, poor visibility, and violent wind will make the water cruel enough. A quirky tick-bit drifts in with the cold. Some New Yorkers later remembered people tying ropes between buildings to cross streets safely. It sounds like an exaggeration invented by dramatic grandmothers, which is a respected historical source in spirit, though not always in footnotes. Yet rope guiding was indeed used in severe storms, including by people trying to move between nearby places when visibility collapsed. Imagine needing a lifeline just to visit the building next door. Very practical. Also slightly insulting to civic pride, the snow deepens outside your room. Along the waterfront, workers hurry to secure loose materials. A barrel rolling free in such wind can become a ridiculous little cannonball. Canvas coverings flap and snap. Dock ropes stiffen under wet snow. Lanterns are checked, trimmed, and carried from place to place, their flames bending behind cloudy glass. Men pull collars up and hats down. Their breath shows white, then vanishes. The city's animals feel the change before many people admit it. Horses lean into gusts with their heads low. Stable boys spread extra straw, the golden smell briefly sweetening the sour dampness. Dogs tuck themselves into doorways. Rats, those tiny landlords of the waterfront, keep to warmer tunnels and walls. Even gulls seem to disappear, and you miss their rude commentary more than expected. Inside, your room becomes a small island. The bed is narrow but solid. The mattress has lumps, because comfort in the 19th century often arrives with conditions attached. A washstand waits in the corner. Your boots sit near the stove, the leather darkened by wet streets. The flame behind the iron door falls and rises, making the shadows breathe. You listen as the wind finds new voices. It moans under the eaves. It whistles at the window latch. It presses snow against the glass in soft bursts, like handfuls of flour thrown by invisible bakers with poor manners. At times the building seems to lean into the storm. Then it settles back with a tired creak. Historians still argue whether New Yorkers were truly caught completely unaware, or whether warnings simply failed to reach ordinary people in useful ways. Forecasts existed, but the language and distribution of warnings were not what later generations would expect. Some people knew a storm was coming. Fewer understood that it might paralyze one of the busiest cities in the world. That uncertainty matters because you can feel it in the room. No one speaks like a survivor. Yet, no one says blizzard in the grand historical tone that later books will use. People say storm, snow, bad night, filthy weather. They speak of errands, boats, wages, deliveries, and mourning obligations. Disaster often enters life without a title card. The clock downstairs strikes an hour you cannot quite count. The sound is dulled by the walls and the storm. You breathe slowly, matching yourself to the soft tick of the stove. Beyond the window, the lamps grow weaker. Snow accumulates along the sill in a white ridge. Every few minutes, a gust lifts part of it into a ghostly spray. From the harbour comes another horn, deeper than the last. It rolls through the snowy dark and seems to touch the bones behind your ears. You picture a pilot straining to read the water, a crewman wiping snow from his face, a captain listening for other vessels he cannot see. The harbour has always required skill, nerve, and luck. Tonight, luck is asked to work extra hours. You lie down at last, though sleep stays just beyond reach. The blanket traps a pocket of warmth around your knees. The pillow smells faintly of starch and cold linen. Your breathing slows. Outside, New York Harbor vanishes one sound at a time. The storm builds without needing witnesses. Snow climbs the stoops and gathers in cart ruts. It covers footprints almost as soon as they are made. It sifts into cracks, piles on awnings, and paints the edges of barrels, ropes, and railings. It turns the practical waterfront into something dreamlike and dangerous. There is beauty in it, inconvenient as that may be. The lamps glow softer. The hard city blurs. The harbour air, usually crowded with harsh odours, grows strangely clean beneath the salt and smoke. For a moment, even the industrial breath of New York seems purified, though of course it is still coal smoke. So let us not become too poetic. You hear a final burst of voices below, then chairs scraping, then quiet. People are choosing corners, beds, benches and blankets. Those with homes hope to reach them. Those without settle where heat can be found. Those on the water keep working, because storms do not pause for tired men. The wind presses again, firmer now, and the window gives a little rattle. You turn onto your side. The room dims as the stove settles into red embers. The white storm outside fills the darkness with movement. You are close to the harbour, close enough to hear its warnings, but sheltered for the moment behind brick, wood, wool, and luck. A foghorn sounds far away, slow and grave. Another answers from the veiled water. Their calls stretch across the snow-bound night like long ropes thrown into darkness. You follow them with your thoughts, not trying to see, only listening. The city is still awake, but quieter now, as if learning the first lesson of the blizzard. By morning, much of what people trust will be interrupted. Trains, ferries, wires, schedules, newspapers, markets and meetings will meet snow on snow's terms. But here, in this hour, you rest at the edge of the harbour while the first great weight of winter settles over March. The flakes keep coming, the wind keeps speaking, the foghorns keep calling through the white dark, patient and lonely, while New York Harbour disappears into sleep. You wake into darkness. Although the room itself has not changed much, the stove still breathes a low red heat, and the blanket still rests with scratchy patience against your chin. Yet the air feels different, thicker somehow, as if the whole city has been packed in cotton and lowered beneath the surface of a dream. You listen first, because sight has become unreliable. The window is a pale, blind square. There is no usual rumble of wheels. No steady procession of hoofbeats passes over the cobbles. No sharp calls rise from early porters near the slips. The harbour district, which normally begins grumbling long before dawn, seems to have forgotten its lines. Then, across the buried dark, a foghorn sounds. It comes low and long, with a tremble inside it. The note rolls through the snow as though it has weight. It reaches your wall, moves through the window frame, and settles in your chest. Another horn answers, softer and farther away. Between them hangs a silence so deep that you can hear the tiny hiss of snow against glass. You sit up slowly, reluctant to leave the warmth your body has made. The floorboards bite cold through your stockings when your feet touch down. A draught moves near the baseboard like a small, invisible animal. You pull on your coat, stiff at the shoulders, and cross toward the window. The glass is filmed with frost along the edges. When you breathe near it, your breath blooms white, then fades. Outside, the world has become uncertain. The street is still there, surely. Buildings must still stand across the way. Lamps must still hang where they always hang. Yet nearly everything has been swallowed by moving snow. A nearby gas lamp appears only as a golden blur, floating without a pole beneath it. The snow travels sideways, upward, downward, and in circles. It has lost all respect for direction. The wind presses against the building with steady force. It does not simply blow. It leans. It shoves. It makes the window rattle in its frame, then releases it just enough to make the next gust more startling. Somewhere above you, loose metal bangs and stops. Bangs and stops, like an impatient hand knocking from the roof. You dress by touch and habit. Shirt, waistcoat, coat, scarf, boots. The boots are still damp near the seams, and the leather feels hard from the cold. When you lace them, your fingers complain. The room smells of extinguished lamp oil, old wool, faint soot, and the sourness of wet boots drying too slowly. It is not elegant. It is very real. Below, the boarding house has awakened into confusion. A door opens, and voices spill upward through the stairwell. Someone is asking about the ferries. Someone else insists that no ferry captain with sense will cross in such weather. A woman says she must reach Brooklyn. Another voice replies that Brooklyn is currently a theory. This earns one tired laugh, which the storm immediately absorbs. You descend with one hand on the rail. The wood is polished smooth by many nervous palms. At the bottom, a small group has gathered near the front windows. Their faces are lit by a lamp that flickers whenever the doorframe groans. Coats hang heavy with melted snow. Gloves steam faintly near the stove. Coffee, boiled too long, gives the room a bitter warmth. A dock worker stands with his cap in his hands, turning it slowly. His beard is crusted white near the chin. He has just come from the direction of the slips, or as near to the slips as a sensible body might get. He says the harbour cannot be seen at all. He says you can hear it better than you can find it. Men are moving by sound, by memory, and by the occasional smear of lantern light. This is not ordinary fog. This is snow thick enough to erase distance. The storm folds land and water together until the mind has trouble separating them. A ship at anchor becomes a voice. A ferry house becomes a darker patch within whiteness. The edge of the pier becomes something you remember rather than something you trust. It is a poor evening for overconfidence. The foghorns continue. They speak from several directions now, sometimes overlapping, sometimes separated by long breaths of weather. Steam whistles shriek from hidden vessels, thinner and sharper than the horns. Bells strike from places you cannot name. Their tones arrive softened by snow, as if the city has wrapped each sound in flannel before sending it onward. You step outside only as far as the entryway at first. The cold touches your face with a flat, stunning palm. Snow pricks your cheeks like tiny grains of salt. The wind steals the warmth from your mouth before you can finish breathing. The gas lamp beyond the stoop wavers in the storm, its halo bursting and shrinking with each gust. The snow underfoot is not soft powder. It is packed, wind-driven, crusted in some places and loose in others. Your boot sinks deeper than expected, then strikes stone. The next step lands on a hidden ridge and twists your ankle slightly. The street has grown uneven overnight. It is making private arrangements beneath its white cover. A man tries to cross from the opposite side, bent almost double. He has wrapped a scarf around his face, leaving only his eyes exposed. He moves from lamp glow to lamp glow, though the lamps are nearly useless. Halfway across, he stops, turns too far left, and nearly walks toward a wagon abandoned near the curb. Someone shouts from a doorway. The words vanish, but the tone guides him back. You understand then how quickly a city can become a maze, not because the streets have moved, but because the clues have disappeared. Signs are hidden, corners blur, footprints fill. A familiar route becomes a question asked in a language you almost know. New York, famous for its noise and confidence, is reduced to guessing. Very humbling. Probably good for it. Once every few decades. By the harbour, visibility is worse. The open water gives the wind room to gather speed, and the snow sweeps across the slips in fierce sheets. Men near the piers keep low and move close to walls, bollards, and railings. Ropes are not just for ships now. They become guides for human hands, rough with ice, tar, and fibres that scrape through gloves. You follow the sound of a horn without meaning to move far. Each note seems to promise a direction, then dissolve into another. The smell of the harbour grows stronger as you approach the open waterfront. Salt, coal soot, wet rope, bilge, fish, and the metallic chill of storm water. The wind carries spray that freezes on exposed surfaces, leaving a glaze on railings and chains. A mainstream historical fact lives in these sounds. New York Harbour was one of the busiest ports in the world during the late 19th century. Ships, ferries, tugs, barges, and lighters served a city fed by global trade and regional movement. When the blizzard smothered the harbour, it did not merely inconvenience travellers, it interrupted the daily pulse of commerce, labour, and food supply. The foghorns are part of that vast system. They are not romantic decorations placed there for future sleepy listeners. They are warnings, tools, and pleas. In poor visibility, sound helps vessels avoid collisions, locate channels, and announce their presence. During a blizzard, however, sound can deceive. Snow and wind bend it, swallow it, and send it strangely sideways. You reach a corner where several people have gathered beneath the lee of a warehouse wall. A lantern hangs from a hook, its flame fluttering behind smoked glass. The men there speak in clipped phrases, conserving warmth. One saw a ferry attempt movement and vanish into white spray. Another heard that a tug lost its bearing near a pier. Someone claims a schooner's rigging has frozen into a glittering cage. Nobody knows what is true. Everyone knows enough to worry. The wall behind you is damp brick, cold even through your coat. Snow collects in the seam between your collar and scarf, then melts and trickles down your neck. It is a small misery, but it feels personal. Your fingers throb inside your gloves. Each gust pulls tears from your eyes, and the tears chill almost at once. The men fall silent as a horn sounds very near. It is so close that you feel it before you understand it. The note spreads through the warehouse wall and the soles of your boots. Then a steam whistle cuts across it, panicked or merely urgent. The snow thickens, sweeping between you and the next pier until even the lantern hook seems far away. A quirky little detail circulates among harbour people in storms like this. Some experienced boatmen claimed they could identify certain vessels by the character of their whistles, much as one might recognise a neighbour's cough through a wall. Whether every claim was accurate is another matter. Sailors, like fishermen, occasionally garnish truth before serving. Still, in a world where sight fails, the ear becomes wonderfully ambitious. You stand there and listen like one of them. The long horn with the mournful dip may be a ferry. The sharper whistle may belong to a tug. A bell somewhere to the right marks a pierhead or a vessel at anchor. The wind rubs every sound against the snow until certainty wears thin. Yet your mind keeps trying to build a map from noises. Historians still debate how much the storm's harbour disruption came from snow itself, and how much came from wind, visibility, ice, tides, and failed communication working together. It is tempting to imagine one villain, a clean white enemy falling from the sky. The reality was more tangled. A blizzard is a committee of problems, and every member wants attention. Back near the boarding house, news arrives in fragments. A boy says elevated trains are stopping. A clerk says telegraph lines are down in places. A woman says a cousin was turned back by drifts near a railway station. The stories blow in with snow on coats and hats. Each account is brushed off, warmed near the stove, and examined by anxious faces. You return indoors when your cheeks ache too much to ignore. The warmth meets you slowly, first at the wrists, then behind the ears. Your boots leave dark patches on the floor. Someone hands you coffee in a chipped cup. It is bitter, overheated, and beautiful. The steam carries a smell like burnt bread and survival. Near the window, an older man sits with his eyes closed, counting the horns under his breath. He once worked the docks, he says, and old habits do not retire gracefully. When a whistle sounds, he tilts his head. When a bell follows, he lifts one finger. He is not solving the storm, he is keeping company with it. The room quiets around him. People listen, because listening is something they can do. Outside, the city's usual arguments are buried. No omnibus rattles past. No newspaper wagon crushes through slush. No bootblack calls from the corner. Even the horses are mostly hidden in stables or stranded under blankets wherever shelter could be found. New York has been placed under a thick white hand. For a while, you stand with both hands wrapped around the cup. The heat stings your palms. The storm speaks through walls and windows in layers. Low wind, sharp rattle, soft hiss, distant horn, closer whistle, muffled shout, then silence. The pattern repeats, never exactly the same. It is almost restful, until you remember that people are inside those sounds, trying to work, steer, wait, and endure. The harbour itself is invisible now, but it feels enormous in the dark. You picture black water chopped by wind, snow vanishing as it strikes the surface, ropes straining, hulls rocking, chains jerking, lamps swinging in white air. You picture pilots leaning into the storm, not heroic in a grand painting way, but tired, cold, practical, and possibly annoyed. Heroes are often annoyed. It keeps them efficient. Hours pass without clear edges. Morning should come, but dawn is only a paler shade of storm. The lamps remain necessary. The windows stay dim. Snow climbs the lower panes. A drift grows against the front door, and every time someone opens it, a slice of winter falls inside. The foghorns do not stop. They call through dawn, through breakfast, through worry, through speculation. Their voices stitch the hidden harbour to the hidden city. They remind everyone that beyond the walls, vessels are still there, crews are still awake, and the water is still moving beneath the white confusion. You grow drowsy again in spite of yourself. Fear and cold can exhaust the body even while the mind remains alert. You settle near the stove, where heat pulses against your knees. Around you, people murmur, listen, sip, and wait. Outside, the storm continues to erase and remake the world. A horn sounds again, long and solemn. The note travels through snow, brick, bone, and breath. You let it pass through you without resisting. In the great muffled harbour, every hidden vessel calls out to be known, and every listener answers by staying still enough to hear. You step into the street when the light has grown grey enough to pretend it is morning. The storm refuses to honour the clock. Snow fills the air with such steady force that time itself feels delayed, as though the city's great machinery has slipped a gear. The boarding house door opens with effort, scraping against a drift that has climbed the threshold during the night. Cold rushes at you immediately. It carries the dry sting of snow, the damp bite of the harbour, and the smoky breath of thousands of coal fires struggling behind brick walls. Your scarf stiffens where your breath touches it. Your eyelashes collect tiny beads of ice. The street ahead is not a street in any useful sense. It is a white trench between dim buildings. You move carefully, one hand along the wall. The bricks feel rough beneath your glove, their mortar lines packed with snow. Every few yards, the wind changes its mind and drives flakes into your face. You turn your head away, then lose your sense of direction. It is absurdly easy to become uncertain while standing outside the very door you just left. A wagon sits abandoned near the curb, though the curb has disappeared. Only the upper part of one wheel shows, a black arc in the drift. The horse is gone, likely taken to shelter by some cold and furious driver. The wagon bed holds a mound of snow so smooth it might have been sculpted. Commerce, for once, is taking a nap. You pass a shop front with shutters closed tight. A painted sign hangs above it, creaking in the gusts. The letters are partly hidden by snow stuck to the boards. You know the shop is familiar, but without its usual smells and chatter, it seems like a stranger. The city has become an album of half-remembered shapes. Lower Manhattan should be alive by this hour. Clerks should be hurrying toward offices with collars raised. Messengers should be weaving through traffic. Horses should be pulling carts, streetcars, and omnibuses over the hard, noisy stones. Instead, the snow accepts every footprint and erases many within minutes. The ordinary map of daily life is being redrawn by wind. A bell sounds above you. You look up through the white blur and see the iron skeleton of an elevated railway. The structure looms overhead, dark and rigid, crossing the street like a frozen ribcage. Usually, trains thunder along those tracks with smoky impatience, shaking windows and sprinkling soot. Today, the rails are buried in snow and ice. The city's proud overhead shortcut has met weather with excellent credentials. A small group stands near the stairway to the elevated station. They are wrapped in coats, shawls, scarves, and expressions of deep betrayal. One man keeps climbing 3 steps, peering upward, then descending again, as if persistence might summon a train. A woman clutches a parcel under her cloak. A clerk stamps his feet and says no city can function like this. Nobody disagrees. Nobody can fix it either. The elevated railways of New York were a major part of late 19th century transportation. They carried many people above street congestion, especially along routes in Manhattan. During the blizzard, trains stalled, tracks froze, and passengers became stranded. The storm revealed the fragility of systems that seemed wonderfully modern on clearer days. Technology is brave until ice sits on its shoulders. You approach the station stairs. The metal railing burns cold through your glove. Snow has drifted across the steps, forming uneven shelves that hide the edges. Halfway up, you hear a shout from above, followed by the scrape of shovels. Men are trying to clear a platform, their movements ghostly in the storm. Their coats are white from shoulders to hem. A train stands farther along the line, blurred by snow. Its cars appear as dark blocks against the pale air. Smoke lifts from the engine, then flattens sideways beneath the wind. You can imagine passengers inside, cramped and chilled, peering through frosted windows at a city they cannot enter or leave. Some may have waited for hours. Some may be composing heroic complaints. You do not climb farther. The wind is fiercer above street level, and the iron steps tremble faintly beneath the gusts. You descend with care, placing each foot into the mark your boot made moments earlier. The mark is already filling. The storm is very efficient in its clerical duties. At street level, a horse appears from the whiteness, led by a man whose hat is tied down with a scarf. The animal's sides steam in the cold. Ice clings to its mane and lashes. Each step sinks nearly to the knee where the drift has gathered deep. The man speaks to it softly, not with command but with negotiation. The horse listens with the patience of a creature who has always suspected humans are poorly organized. The smell of the animal reaches you. Warm hide, wet hair, leather, straw, and the sour musk of fear. Its hooves strike hidden stones, then slide. The driver steadies the bridle with both hands. Another man comes forward to help push the wagon behind it, but the wheels barely move. Snow has locked around the axles. The men grunt. The horse strains, and the wagon shifts only a few inches. Then the driver gives up. He pats the horse's neck and curses the weather with impressive economy. It is almost poetic. Together, the men begin unhitching the animal. Saving the horse matters more than saving the wagon now. The city's freight can wait beneath its blanket. A few people watch from nearby doorways. Nobody laughs. Horses are part of the city's muscle, and their distress is visible in a way machinery's distress is not. A stalled train is inconvenient. A struggling horse is personal. You feel the tightness in your own throat as the animal is led toward a stable entrance half hidden by snow. The street narrows ahead, not because the buildings change, but because drifts rise along both sides. Snow has blown against stoops, cellar doors, fences, piles of crates, and anything else that interrupts the wind. In some places, only a centre path remains, trampled by those desperate enough to travel. In others, no path exists at all. Each walker becomes a pioneer in a very urban wilderness. You move toward a broader avenue, though the word broader has become optimistic. A policeman stands near an intersection, his helmet rim crusted white. He is trying to direct movement that barely exists. When someone asks which way to a particular street, he points, then hesitates. Visibility is so poor that even authority must admit uncertainty. That is always a historic moment. The policeman advises people to keep close to buildings. He says one man walked into a drift higher than his chest. Another nearly fell into an open excavation hidden by snow. Such hazards are not dramatic in the theatrical sense, but they are exactly the sort that make a blizzard deadly. The world does not need cliffs when it can hide a cellar stair. A quirky titbit spreads among the doorway watchers. Some children, released from school by necessity rather than mercy, have begun tunnelling into drifts, as if Manhattan has become an Arctic playground. Adults do not approve, at least officially. Yet several adults pause to admire the engineering. In a city where most children play in alleys and cramped rooms, snow offers sudden architecture. Dangerous architecture, yes, but still impressive. You see one of these little tunnels near a stoop, a neat, dark opening beneath a white mound. A mittened hand briefly appears, then vanishes. A woman at the doorway orders the unseen architect back inside. Her voice contains love, anger, and the ancient exhaustion of caregivers everywhere. The child emerges dusted head to toe, grinning as if history has been arranged for personal amusement. Not far away, several men begin cutting a passage through a drift with shovels and boards. The snow is packed hard by wind, layered in places like cake, though less festive and much colder. Shovel blades strike crust, sink, lift, and toss. The rhythm becomes steady. Scrape, grunt, lift, thud. Scrape, grunt, lift, thud. It is the music of a city refusing to remain buried. The workers expose the top of a fire hydrant. Someone jokes that at least the hydrant has enjoyed a restful morning. Another man says fires will be dreadful if engines cannot pass. The joke fades quickly. Snow can smother streets, but it does not make wooden buildings fireproof. In dense neighbourhoods, blocked access can turn a small emergency into a catastrophe. You walk past a bakery where the door is open despite the cold. The smell inside is astonishing. Yeast, warm flour, sugar, and smoke. A line has formed, though line may be generous for a cluster of bundled people pressed against the wall. Bread matters. Coffee matters. Ordinary food becomes serious when streets fail and deliveries stop. You buy a small roll, hard at the edges, and warm enough to comfort your hands. The crust cracks softly when you break it. Steam rises from the pail inside. You taste salt, grain, and a little ash from the oven. It is simple bread, but the storm makes it memorable. The baker's wife says flour sacks are piled in the back, yet fuel may become the trouble. Coal carts cannot move easily. Everything depends on movement, until movement stops. Historians have long discussed whether the blizzard's paralysis revealed a transportation crisis already growing inside New York. Some argue the storm merely exposed weaknesses that commuters tolerated every day. Crowded streets, reliance on horses, vulnerable rails, and fragmented services. Others stress that the event was so extreme that nearly any city would have suffered badly. The truth may sit somewhere in the snowdrift between them. You continue through lower Manhattan as sounds arrive in strange portions. A shovel scrapes nearby, but the worker is invisible. A woman's voice calls from an upper window, asking whether the streetcars are running. Someone below answers no with unnecessary volume, as if the storm itself might be hard of hearing. A distant crash follows, perhaps a sign or shutter torn loose by the wind. Streetcar tracks vanish beneath snow and ice. In calmer weather, horse-drawn streetcars move along fixed rails, offering predictable routes for workers and shoppers. Today, those rails are useless silver lines hidden under white weight. Where cars have stalled, they form obstacles. Their windows are frosted. Their benches sit empty. Their horses have been led away when possible, leaving the cars like abandoned waiting rooms. A man in a bowler hat tries to maintain dignity while climbing over a drift. The attempt fails gradually, then completely. He sinks thigh deep, flails with one gloved hand, and loses the hat to a gust. The hat rolls twice and disappears into whiteness. He stares after it with the grief of a man watching civilization collapse. Someone retrieves it with a cane. Dignity is restored, though slightly dented. The city is full of these small negotiations. People borrow shovels, strangers steady elbows. Shopkeepers open doors to let travellers warm their hands. A messenger boy uses a board like a sled to slide down a drift, then remembers he is supposed to look professional. Snow makes everyone a little ridiculous. That may be its hidden social function. As you near a wider street, the wind strikes unobstructed and nearly turns you sideways. Snow rasps across your cheek. You taste cold, mineral grit, soot, and salt from your own lips. The atmosphere has weight and texture, not merely temperature. It presses into your ears until the world narrows to breath, footsteps, and the next dark doorway. Above, telegraph wires sag under ice. Some have snapped and hang in loops, half buried in drifts or swinging dangerously near walls. People give them a wary distance. The wires once seemed like delicate proof of progress, carrying messages faster than any horse or train. In the storm, they look like broken harp strings. The city's music has been interrupted. A delivery boy tells a gathered knot of listeners that one office has runners carrying messages by hand again. This receives knowing nods. Progress, when chilled sufficiently, often returns to feet. The boy claims he can get anywhere south of a certain street if paid properly. His confidence is either admirable or financially motivated, perhaps both. You turn back toward the waterfront district, following a path that curves between drifts. The harbour is still mostly hidden, but its presence shapes the air. The wind smells wetter there. The cold has a sharper edge. Foghorns and whistles still sound through the whiteness, though the street noises now mingle with them. Shovels, calls, doors slamming, horses snorting, boots crunching, and occasional laughter. The snow tunnels grow deeper where buildings funnel the wind. You pass between two warehouses, and the drifts rise so high along the walls that only a narrow trough remains. For a moment, you walk below the level of the buried street edges. The snow walls beside you are blue-white in the dimness, layered and smooth. Your shoulder brushes one side, and powder spills down your sleeve. It is strangely quiet in the trough. The wind passes above with a hollow roar. Your steps crunch softly beneath you. The smell is clean here, almost entirely snow, with only a faint undercurrent of coal smoke and harbour tar. You pause, sheltered for a few breaths, and listen to your own breathing inside the scarf. The city feels far away, though brick walls stand inches from your hands. Then someone appears at the far end, carrying a lantern. The flame glows amber inside the snowy passage. For a moment, the scene looks almost gentle, like a winter fairy tale written by a committee of dock workers. The stranger nods as you pass. No speech is needed. In this weather, courtesy can be a simple shift of the shoulder. By the time you return near shelter, your legs ache from lifting through drifts. Your face feels stiff. Snow has melted into your gloves and chilled again. Yet your mind is wide awake with the strange new geography of the storm. Streets have become corridors. Stations have become waiting rooms without promises. Horses, trains, clerks, children, bakers, police officers, and dock workers all move inside the same white problem. Inside the doorway, you stamp your boots and hear snow fall in heavy clumps. Warm air finds your cheeks like a blessing. Behind you, the city remains muffled and transformed, its famous speed slowed to a careful human pace. The elevated tracks stand silent overhead. The streetcars sleep under snow. The horses breathe in their stalls. People keep digging small passages through the great white interruption. You close the door against the wind and hold the last image in your mind. Lower Manhattan turned into a maze of snow tunnels, with lanterns moving softly through them like patient stars. You settle near the waterfront as the storm drives more people indoors, one gust at a time. The place is not grand, but it is warm enough to become precious. It may be a tavern room, a warehouse office, or the public corner of a boarding house where the stove has become a small iron sun. Around it, strangers gather with the quiet urgency of people who have stopped pretending they are only passing through. Snow presses against the lower window panes. The glass is thick with frost, leaving only cloudy circles where fingers have rubbed small viewing holes. Through those openings, the street appears in pieces, a lamp glow, a dark shoulder, a shovel blade, a wall of moving white. The world outside has become a lantern show performed by bad weather. Inside, the air is crowded and damp. Wet wool steams gently from coats hung near the stove. Boots leave puddles that spread across the floorboards. Tobacco smoke lingers under the ceiling beams, mixing with coffee, coal soot, old ale, onion soup, and the sour salt smell carried in from the piers. It is not fresh air, it is shelter air, and shelter air has forgiven many sins. You sit on a bench near the wall, close enough to feel warmth on your knees. The wood beneath you is worn smooth by years of workers, travellers, and men with nowhere better to sit. A woman in a dark bonnet warms her hands around a cup she has not yet tasted. A young clerk keeps checking a pocket watch, as if time might apologise. A dock labourer sleeps upright with his chin on his chest. The room has become a temporary village. Nobody planned it, which is how many temporary villages begin. A ferryman, 2 porters, a seamstress, a messenger boy, a night watchman, a travelling salesman, a mother with a tired child, and several men whose occupations remain politely mysterious, all share the same stove. The storm has rearranged social boundaries with one enormous white hand. The child is wrapped in a shawl and seated on a crate near the warmest corner. Her cheeks are pink from cold, and her eyes keep closing, then opening again in suspicion. Sleep comes near her, but the room is too interesting. The messenger boy makes a coin vanish between his fingers. It reappears behind her ear. She permits a tiny smile. The adults pretend not to enjoy it. A kettle sits on the stove, puffing steam from its spout. The sound is small and steady, almost domestic. Each time the door opens, the steam twists sideways in the blast of cold. People look up, assessing the newcomer with quick concern. Is anyone hurt? Is there news? Is there more snow on the way? The answers are usually no, uncertain, and yes, obviously. A night watchman enters with ice in his beard. He is broad-shouldered, red-eyed, and carrying a lantern coated in snow. He reports that several warehouse doors have been checked and barred. Loose crates near one pier were moved against a wall. A line has been tied between 2 entrances so workers can cross the yard without wandering. He says this last part with professional calm. Everyone listens as if he has described a voyage to the moon. You notice his hands when he removes his gloves. The knuckles are cracked, reddened, and swollen from cold. He holds them near the stove, but not too close, careful not to make the pain sharper. The skin steams faintly. He says nothing dramatic. People who are truly cold usually do not waste language on poetry. They need warmth, not applause. A mainstream historical fact rests in this room with the wet coats and tired faces. The Great Blizzard of 1888 stranded thousands of people away from home. Hotels, police stations, shops, offices, depots, and private houses became improvised shelters. In a city built on movement, forced stillness created sudden communities, some generous, some crowded, many uncomfortable, and all unforgettable. The tavern keeper, if tavern keeper he is, brings out bread, soup, and coffee at irregular intervals. He is not exactly smiling. Charity and bookkeeping are having a private quarrel behind his eyes. Yet he ladles soup for the child and does not ask for coin. The soup smells of onion, pepper, marrow, and old pot. It tastes better than its ingredients deserve, which is another gift of terrible weather. You take a bowl in both hands. The heat seeps into your fingers through the crockery. The first sip is salty and rich, with a faint scorch from the bottom of the pot. It warms your throat and settles into your chest. Outside, the wind claws at shutters. Inside, spoons scrape bowls with soft, grateful sounds. Conversation begins in fragments, then spreads like heat. The ferryman speaks about the slips, where snow has piled against gates and the water cannot be seen from 3 yards away. He says sound travels strangely over the harbour, making near things seem far and far things seem near. A porter nods and says the storm has turned every man into a bad philosopher. No one challenges this. The travelling salesman opens his case to check whether damp has ruined his samples. He sells collars, cuffs, and other small articles meant to improve the appearance of men who already own mirrors. One paper box has softened at the corners. He sighs as though the loss has moral significance. The seamstress offers to help dry some pieces near the stove. He accepts with a bow that is nearly elegant. Near the far wall, 2 dock workers discuss wages lost to the storm. Their voices are low, A day without work is not merely inconvenience when rent, food, and coal must be paid in real money. Bad weather has class distinctions, even when it throws snow equally at everyone's windows. Some people are delayed, others are hungry by Thursday. That truth sits quietly beneath the room's warmth. A quirky tidbit passes from mouth to mouth with surprising cheer. One stranded office worker is said to have slept in a pile of mailbags near a post office, claiming in the morning that government property had never been so comfortable. Whether the story is polished for entertainment is hard to know. It sounds plausible enough, especially because tired people can sleep on almost anything, and later defend the arrangement as strategic. The mother with the child asks whether letters will move at all. A postal clerk, stranded with snow melting from his sleeves, answers that the mails are delayed everywhere. Rail connections are broken. Carriers cannot make rounds. Bags are piled where they should not be piled. He speaks with the wounded pride of a man whose system has been personally insulted. The mother nods, though her worry is private. You learn that many people in the room were trying to get somewhere ordinary. Home, work, a dock office, a cousin's house, a ferry landing, a railway station. The storm has made each simple destination sound adventurous, almost mythic. The clerk with the watch was due at a counting house. He now watches the hands turn as if money itself might freeze. The night watchman removes his boots near the stove and peels off wet socks. This is done with the solemnity of surgery. His toes are pale but moving. Someone hands him a dry cloth. Someone else shifts over on the bench. Help arrives without ceremony, which may be the best kind. The watchman murmurs thanks and stares into the stove, as if reading news in the coals. Historians sometimes dispute how spontaneous and widespread this neighbourhood aid truly was during the blizzard. Some accounts emphasise remarkable kindness among strangers, while others describe price gouging, crowding, confusion, and hard choices. Both can be true in a large city under stress. Snow does not make saints of everyone. It only reveals who already keeps a spare blanket. The door opens again, and a man falls in rather than enters. Two others catch him under the arms. He is not badly injured, only exhausted from fighting the drifts. His hat is gone, his hair is plastered white, and his moustache is frozen into two unhappy points. He had been trying to reach a warehouse where he feared a stove was left burning. The watchman says he checked that building already. The man closes his eyes in relief. People make room for him near the heat. His coat is unbuttoned with stiff fingers. Snow falls from him in clumps, landing on the boards with little sighs. Someone laughs softly at the shape his frozen moustache has taken. He opens one eye and says he paid extra for the style. The room laughs, not loudly, but enough to lift the ceiling a little. Outside, shoveling continues near the entrance. You can hear the scrape of metal against packed snow, then the dull toss against a growing bank. The rhythm is comforting because it means effort still matters. Every cleared foot of path is an argument against surrender. The wind fills some of it again, naturally. Weather can be petty. A lamp is trimmed, the flame brightens, and the room's faces sharpen. You see soot smudges, red noses, tired eyes, cracked lips, and the fine sparkle of melted snow in hair. You see a torn glove repaired with twine. You see a woman's wedding ring turning loosely on a chilled finger. You see the child finally asleep, her head leaning against her mother's arm. The atmosphere softens as evening thickens. People lower their voices without being told. The storm outside remains fierce, but the room has found a rhythm, feeding the stove, drying clothes, sharing rumours, listening for horns, checking the door, counting those who come in, and making space. These are humble rituals, but they hold the night together. The waterfront beyond the walls stays dangerous. Men worry about mooring lines, frozen cargo, and vessels grinding against piers. A gust can shift a boat, ice can lock a rope, snow can hide a gap between dock and deck. The harbour is close enough that every distant horn turns heads. Nobody here forgets the water. It waits outside the snow, black and restless. You are given a place to rest on folded sacks near the wall. They smell of grain, burlap, dust, and a faint sweetness that might be spilled molasses. The sacks are uneven, but your body accepts them with gratitude. Your coat becomes a blanket. Your scarf becomes a pillow. Luxury is a flexible concept during a blizzard. Nearby, the salesman is telling the seamstress about a town in Ohio where a rooster supposedly crowed through an entire snowstorm, convinced dawn was merely delayed by poor management. The seamstress says the rooster sounds like several men she has known. The ferryman coughs into his cup to hide a laugh. Gentle sarcasm survives the weather beautifully. A gust shakes the building hard enough to send a little snow puffing through the edge of the door. Everyone pauses. The stove ticks. The child sighs in sleep. Then conversation resumes, quieter than before. The room has accepted that fear may enter, but it does not have to take the best chair. You lie back and watch shadows move along the ceiling. The lamplight trembles whenever the wind strikes. Boots dry in a row near the stove, their soles turned toward the warmth like tired faces. Wet coats hang from hooks, dripping steadily into pans and buckets. The smell of damp wool has become almost soothing. Your senses are learning this place as shelter. Somewhere outside, a shovel falls with a muffled clang. Someone calls out, then laughs. Farther off, a foghorn gives its long, lonely note, and the room quiets around it. The sound enters through the shutters and settles among the sleeping and half-sleeping. It reminds you that the harbour is still hidden, still breathing, still asking to be heard. You close your eyes, but the room remains vivid. The kettle whispers, the stove glows. A man snores lightly from a chair. The child breathes against her mother's sleeve. Snow presses softly against the walls, as if the whole storm has leaned close to listen. For now, this crowded shelter is enough. Not comfortable in any polished sense, not peaceful in any easy sense, but warm, human, and stubborn. Around you, strangers become temporary neighbours, while New York Harbour sleeps behind a curtain of snow, and the night folds itself gently around the waiting room of the storm. You rise from uneasy rest to the sound of chains speaking in the dark. The noise comes from the harbour, carried through walls, shutters, snow, and the low groan of wind. It is not a clean ringing, it is a strained metallic clatter, followed by a heavy pull, then a deep knock that seems to travel through water and wood together. Somewhere, a vessel is tugging at its anchor or grinding against a pier. The room around you is dim. The stove still glows, though its heat has sunk lower, and the air carries the stale comfort of many sleepers. Someone has placed another scuttle of coal nearby. The coal smells dusty, sharp, and faintly oily. A man in the corner coughs into his sleeve. The child near the stove murmurs in her sleep, then settles again. Outside, the storm has not tired. Snow scrapes the window with a dry whisper, then strikes in hard pellets when the gusts rise. You sit up and listen. The harbour is no longer simply hidden. It is restless. Foghorns sound through the murk, but between them come smaller noises. Rope snapping taut, timber knocking, steam hissing, bells tapping unevenly, men calling from places you cannot see. A ferryman near the door has been awake for some time. His cap is pulled low, and his face looks older in lamplight. He hears the same sounds you hear. Without drama, he stands, buttons his coat, and wraps a scarf around his neck. Two dock workers rise with him. Nobody asks whether it is sensible to go out. Sense has become a narrow thing, and duty has elbows. You follow them only to the outer doorway at first. The door opens inward with a shove against the drift, letting snow slide across the floor. The cold enters like an accusation. Your eyes sting at once. The street outside has nearly vanished under waves of white, and the wind drives snow along the ground in low, ghostly streams. The men tie a rope around one another's waists. It is not elegant equipment. It is working rope, rough, tarred, and stiff with cold. Fibres catch against their gloves. The ferryman gives the line a testing pull, then nods. One end is tied to an iron ring near the entrance, The other disappears with them into the white. They become shadows, then smudges, then voices. You wait for several breaths, holding the door frame. The wood feels icy beneath your hand. Snow strikes your face and melts at the corners of your eyes. Beyond the doorway, the harbour sends another metallic groan inland. It is the sound of weight resisting movement, or movement resisting restraint. Either way, it does not sound patient. You step outside when another worker gestures for help with lanterns. The lantern assigned to you has a warm brass handle and glass dimmed by soot. Its flame shivers in the wind, protected but anxious. You keep close to the wall, moving through a path cut between drifts. Snow pushes at your knees. Each step makes your legs work as if you are climbing stairs that keep changing height. The smell of the harbour grows stronger with every yard. Salt and freezing spray cut through coal smoke. Wet rope smells like old ships and dark cellars. Tar from pier timbers rises in bitter notes. There is also the smell of river mud, disturbed by weather and tide, cold and mineral and ancient beneath the city's noise. The water is invisible, but your nose finds it. You reach a warehouse corner where several men are gathered, lanterns held low. From there, you can see only fragments of the pier, a row of posts capped with snow, a slanting line of railing, the black suggestion of water beyond. A vessel lies somewhere out there, close enough that its rigging makes a thin, eerie sound as wind passes through it. The lines hum and creak like a frozen harp played by someone with no manners. A mainstream historical fact sits in this wildness. The harbour still held many sailing vessels alongside steamcraft in the late 19th century. Steamships were powerful, but schooners, barges, canal boats, and other working craft remained essential. During the blizzard, this mixture of old and new technologies faced the same blunt weather. Steam could help, but it could not make snow transparent or turn ice harmless. The ferryman points toward a darker shape where the snow thins briefly. A small vessel has shifted nearer the pier than anyone likes. Its mooring lines are thick with ice, and one line appears to have chafed badly against a post. The crew aboard are shouting, but the wind tears the words into scraps. A lantern swings on deck, rising and falling in a slow, sick rhythm. You stand with the others while a dockworker crawls rather than walks along the pier edge. He keeps one hand on the guide rope and one hand near the planks. Snow has filled gaps between boards, making the surface look deceptively smooth. Beneath that smoothness are openings, iron fittings, coils of frozen line, and the black water itself. A polite surface can be a dreadful liar. The worker reaches a post and clears it with his mittened hands. Snow falls away in chunks. Ice gleams beneath, blue in the lantern light. He uses a tool to knock the ice loose, each strike ringing through the storm. The vessel's line jerks suddenly, and everyone stiffens. The rope groans. The post holds. A quirky harbour story rises from one of the older men watching beside you. He says sailors sometimes put hot potatoes in their pockets on bitter nights, not for supper first, but to keep their hands warm. Later, if the potatoes survived pocket duty, they became supper. It is hard to know how often this occurred, but nobody in the storm mocks the idea. Several people look as though they would marry a hot potato immediately. The crew aboard the vessel tosses another line. It falls short, vanishing into snow near the pier. A second try lands closer, whipping across the planks like a dark snake. The dockworker grabs it and signals for help. Two men pull behind him, boots braced in snow. You hold the lantern higher, though your arm trembles in the wind. The light falls on their shoulders, white with snow and bent with effort. The line is hauled around a post, then secured with numb, awkward hands. Knots that would be simple in fair weather become clumsy negotiations. Gloves are too thick. Bare fingers are too dangerous. The men curse softly and creatively, careful not to waste warmth on volume. At last the line is fixed, and the vessel's motion steadies slightly. Not safe, exactly. Safer. The ship's hull knocks once against ice and timber. You feel the sound in your teeth. Snow sweeps between you and the deck, hiding the crew again. Their lantern becomes a blurry orange bead. One voice calls thanks. Another horn answers from somewhere farther out, deep and sorrowful. The storm accepts the gratitude without comment. You move along the pier only a short distance, guided by rope and lantern light. The world narrows to immediate things, your glove on frozen hemp, your boots sinking into uneven snow, the sting along your cheeks, the salty dampness gathering on your lips. The atmosphere is so full of snow that breathing feels like drawing air through cloth. It tastes of cold iron. A tugboat lies near another slip, steam rising from its stack in torn white ribbons. Its deck is crusted with snow, and its railings wear thick sleeves of ice. A man aboard hacks at frozen gear with a small axe. Each blow is measured, not frantic. Steam power gives the tug muscle, but the crew must still keep valves, lines, ladders, and deck fittings usable. Machinery dislikes being entombed, which is fair enough. Historians still argue about the exact number of vessels damaged or endangered around the broader region during the storm, partly because reports were scattered, delayed, and sometimes contradictory. Local newspapers gathered dramatic accounts when communication returned, but not every small craft left a clear record. Harbour history often belongs to paperwork, memory, and a few cold men who had better things to do than count. The tug's whistle shrieks suddenly. The sound is so sharp that you flinch. It vanishes into the snow almost at once, swallowed by wind and distance. A reply comes faintly from across the water, or perhaps from behind you. Direction has become untrustworthy again. The men glance at one another. Nobody enjoys a harbour where sound refuses to stand still. A dock worker beside you explains, in a voice half carried away, that vessels may drag anchor when wind and current combine badly. He cups one hand around his mouth and leans close so you can hear. Anchors can hold beautifully until they do not. Chains can part. Lines can freeze stiff and chafe through. A small weakness can become a large problem when the whole harbour is blind. You think of the ships not as grand silhouettes, but as working places full of cold hands. Men aboard are checking knots, pumps, boilers, lamps, cargo hatches, and one another's tempers. They are hungry, wet, and probably unimpressed by romantic descriptions of maritime courage. Their world is practical. Keep the line from parting. Keep the boiler fed. Keep the deck clear enough. Keep the vessel off the pier. Poetry can wait. Snow gathers on your shoulders until someone brushes it off with a gloved hand. The touch surprises you with its blunt kindness. Your coat has stiffened where freezing spray settled. Your scarf is damp against your neck. The lantern handle grows painful in your grip, so you shift it to the other hand. The brass has stolen your warmth greedily. Very rude, for such a helpful object. The storm opens for a moment, just enough to reveal the harbour in a broken glimpse. You see black water heaving under white streaks of snow. You see masts fading upward into the murk. You see a ferry shape moored and motionless. Its windows dark except for one faint glow. You see ice clinging to ropes like thick glass. Then the snow closes again, and the vision is gone. That brief sight stays with you. The harbour is not frozen solid into stillness. It is alive, working beneath its shroud, full of moving surfaces and hidden strain. The snow above suggests silence, but the water underneath keeps shouldering itself against pilings, hulls, chains, and shore. Nature has many departments, and apparently none of them coordinate politely. Another shout rises from the nearest vessel. A crewman needs a hook passed along the line. The tool is found in a shed, half blocked by drift. You help dig at the door with a board, scraping packed snow away until the latch can be forced. Inside, the shed smells of oil, old wood, rope, and rust. Tools hang on pegs like sleeping animals. The hook is found after a brief search, cold and heavy in your hands. You pass it along through 3 pairs of gloves. It reaches the pier edge, then disappears toward the vessel. The task is small, almost ridiculous when measured against the storm. Yet small tasks are how survival usually arrives. A knot tied, a lamp kept lit, a door cleared, a tool found. Not glamorous, perhaps, but glamour has terrible grip in icy weather. As the hours drift, no clear victory announces itself. The men do not defeat the blizzard. They secure what can be secured and retreat when staying becomes foolish. The vessel rides steadier. The tug keeps steam. The guide rope holds. No one has gone into the water, which feels like a triumph large enough to honour quietly. You turn back toward the shelter with the others. The path inland is partly filled again, but the rope leads you through. Your legs feel heavy and oddly distant. Snow crunches beneath your boots, then gives way. The lantern flame steadies as buildings block some of the wind. The smell of soup and coal smoke reaches you before the door does. Inside, warmth arrives as a slow ache. People look up when you enter, counting faces without saying they are counting. The ferryman nods once, and that is the report. Coats are stripped off, gloves are laid near the stove. Someone pours coffee into cups and hands them around. Your fingers tremble when you accept yours. The cup warms your palms. The room's sounds return, spoon against bowl, kettle hiss, murmured questions, a sleeper shifting on sacks. Outside, the harbour continues to groan, whistle, and breathe behind the snow. Its vessels remain trapped between water and weather, held by rope, anchor, engine, labour, and luck. You sit near the stove and close your eyes. The phantom pull of the guide rope remains in your hand. In your ears, chains still grind and horns still call. The city may be buried, the streets may be tunnels, and the harbour may be blind, but out on the hidden water, people keep hold of what they can. You sit near a desk that was never meant to serve as a news office, message station, and complaint counter at once. Its surface is scarred with ink stains, knife marks, and old rings from cups. Now it holds damp envelopes, a ledger, 2 cracked pens, a chipped inkwell, and a small mountain of rumours. The storm has turned every scrap of information into a thing people lean toward. A clerk from a shipping office has taken charge of the desk, mostly because he owns the neatest handwriting. This is how authority sometimes begins. He writes down names, addresses, errands, vessel numbers, delivery promises, and family concerns. People come to him with questions he cannot answer. He records them anyway, because a written line feels steadier than a spoken worry. The air smells of ink, wet wool, coal smoke, and cooling soup. A lamp burns beside the ledger, sending a mild heat against your wrist when you stand close. Its flame reveals snowmelt shining on the floorboards. Boots scrape, chairs shift. The door opens now and then, letting cold air roll across ankles and underskirts. Each entrance brings another person carrying news, or something shaped like news. The city's usual nerves are failing. Telegraph wires, once strung confidently across streets and rooftops, have snapped in many places under snow, ice, and wind. Telephone service, still new enough to feel almost magical, is also broken in parts of the city. Messages that would have flown in seconds now wait inside cold mouths, pockets, offices, and unopened mailbags. Progress has caught a chill. A man enters with a length of broken wire looped around his arm. He says he found it hanging near a corner, low enough to frighten horses and pedestrians alike. Everyone gives the wire space, as if it might remember its old power and make a final argument. It is black, wet, and strangely limp. Only yesterday, such wires seemed almost alive with invisible words. Now this one looks like a dead eel. The clerk frowns at it. He writes, "Wire down near South Street. Dangerous. Needs repair." The note is precise, practical, and nearly useless. There is no easy way to send it to the people who might repair the damage. The messenger boy offers to carry it if someone pays him and gives him bread. His business sense has survived the weather beautifully. You watch him tuck several folded notes under his coat. They are wrapped in oilcloth to protect them from snow. His cheeks are red, his cap too large, and his confidence alarming. He claims he can reach a police station, a livery stable, and one telegraph office still taking messages. The route he describes sounds partly real and partly invented by hunger. The clerk studies him, then hands over one note and half a roll. The boy leaves into the white, and the room listens to the door close behind him. For a few seconds, everyone imagines him swallowed by drifts. Then someone says he knows every alley from here to Broadway. Someone else says boys are made of India rubber and bad judgment. The tension loosens. Still, eyes return to the window. A mainstream historical fact sits at the heart of this anxious desk. The blizzard exposed the danger of depending on overhead communication wires in a dense modern city. Ice and wind brought down telegraph, telephone, and electrical lines, leaving offices, newspapers, railroads, businesses, and families disconnected. Public pressure for underground wires and more reliable systems grew stronger because people could suddenly feel the weakness above their heads. The shipping clerk opens another ledger from his own office, its pages smelling of damp paper and leather. Several scheduled arrivals are marked in careful columns. Steamers, barges, coastal schooners, cargo transfers, insurance notices, bills of lading, delivery times. The columns look very sure of themselves. The storm has not bothered to read them. A dock agent points to an entry and asks whether word has come from a vessel expected at a pier. No word. A grocer asks whether flour wagons can move from the waterfront. No certainty. A woman wants a message sent to her sister in Harlem. Not yet. A man asks whether trains from the north are running. Laughter does not answer him. Exactly. But the room exhales in a way that says no. News used to arrive here by many paths. Newspapers came by wagon and rail. Telegraph offices clicked with reports from other cities. Business runners moved between exchanges, banks, and docks. Harbour pilots carried word from vessels. Ferries transported gossip with magnificent efficiency. Now each path is narrowed, blocked, delayed, or silenced. The city has become a giant ear pressed against a wall. You step outside with two others to look at a nearby pole. The wind has dropped slightly, but the snow still falls thickly. The pole leans at an uncomfortable angle, burdened with wires sagging like black vines. Ice coats them, making them thick and glossy. A snapped line lies partly buried in the snow, emerging and disappearing like a trail left by some metallic snake. Your glove touches the wooden pole, and you feel a faint vibration from the wind. The surface is rough, wet, and crusted with ice. Above, the wires twitch and clack against one another. It is an uneasy sound, delicate and dangerous. A horse being led past shies away, nostrils flaring. The handler murmurs to it, guiding it around the fallen line with care. A passerby says the city should have buried the wires years ago. Another says burying anything in Manhattan costs money, time, and shouting. A third says shouting is the city's cheapest natural resource. Even in a blizzard, municipal philosophy blooms quickly. The three men stand there for a moment, snow collecting on their hats, each certain the others are missing the obvious. A quirky titbit travels with the wire talk. Some buildings had rooftops so crowded with poles, crossbars, and lines that observers compared them to strange forests. One annoyed resident supposedly said birds needed a map to land safely. That may be embroidered, but rooftop wire tangles were real enough. New York had strung its ambitions into the air, and the storm was now tugging at the whole untidy loom. Back inside, the desk has grown busier. The clerk is sorting messages into piles: urgent, possible, impossible, and sentimental. He has not labelled the last pile aloud, but everyone understands. Love letters, family notices, small reassurances, apologies, and requests for someone to wait. These may not keep a business alive, yet they matter deeply to the people who wrote them. You were asked to help dry several envelopes. Damp has softened their corners. You hold them near the stove, not close enough to scorch, turning them slowly between your fingers. The paper warms and releases a faint smell of paste, ink, and human handling. Some handwriting is elegant, some hurried, some nearly desperate. Each envelope is a tiny room containing a voice, One elderly man wants a message sent to his daughter across the East River. He dictates carefully. Safe. Warm. Delayed. Do not worry. The clerk writes each word in a clear hand. The man watches as if the sentence itself has become a bridge. He asks whether it will reach her today. The clerk pauses. Perhaps, he says. It is a merciful answer, and not quite a promise. The storm has made language physical again. Messages need feet, pockets, ferries, rails, wires, and luck. Without them, words sit helplessly in ink. You feel this as you fold a note and press it flat. Communication is not only invention, it is also infrastructure, weather, labour, and someone willing to carry a paper through snow up to the thighs. Historians still debate how decisively the blizzard accelerated underground communication projects, because reform had many causes and many obstacles. Some officials and engineers already favoured burying wires for safety and appearance. The storm added urgency and public pressure, but change still required legal decisions, money, construction, and many arguments conducted at professional volume. Catastrophe can open a door, but committees still walk through it slowly. A newspaper man arrives, or at least a man who claims connection to a newspaper office. His coat is crusted white from shoulders to hem, and he carries a notebook tucked under his vest. He asks questions quickly. Deaths, rescues, vessels damaged, trains halted, wires down, people sheltered. His pencil is worn short. His hands shake from cold as he writes. People feed him stories at once. A horse buried to its harness. A woman carried across a drift in a chair. A man who dug from his own doorway to the street and found the street higher than the stoop. A ferry heard, but never seen. A boy delivering notes through a cellar route. The newspaper man writes, frowns, asks names, and writes again. Truth and exaggeration crowd around his pencil. He says printing may be difficult. Staff cannot reach offices. Paper supplies and distribution are uncertain. Presses may run, but wagons may not. The idea that newspapers might fail to appear unsettles the room. People can accept snow on boots more easily than silence in print. New York likes to read about itself. One might call it a hobby. The clerk asks whether any outside reports have arrived. The newspaper man shakes his head. Lines are broken in too many directions. Rumours suggest the storm stretches far beyond the city, battering inland towns and coastal communities. Nobody knows the full shape of it. The blizzard has made the region feel both enormous and sealed inside one small, snowy room. Near the stove, the travelling salesman tries to send a message to a customer explaining his delay. The clerk asks if the matter is urgent. The salesman says reputation is always urgent. The seamstress, mending a torn glove, says warmth is more urgent. The room accepts her judgment. The salesman sighs, then donates the dry paper from his sample case for message wrappers. Character development arrives quietly sometimes. You look through the cleared circle in the window. Outside, a man on snowshoes passes slowly. Or something close to snowshoes, perhaps improvised boards strapped under his boots. People press toward the glass. He moves awkwardly, knees lifting high, poles digging into drifts. Someone says northern methods have come to Manhattan at last. Someone else says Manhattan will charge rent on them by morning. The messenger boy returns near dusk, astonishingly alive and very proud. His cap is sideways, his scarf iced solid along one edge, and his grin wide enough to count as a separate lantern. He delivered one note, failed with another, and learned that several offices are simply closed. The police station took names of stranded people. One telegraph office had a line working briefly, then lost it again. The room receives his report like a dispatch from a frontier. He is given soup, coffee diluted with milk, and more attention than is healthy for a boy's ego. He claims the drifts near one corner are taller than a carriage. This may be true. It may also improve with each telling. The clerk writes down what can be verified and lets the rest warm the room. Outside, darkness thickens. The lamp on the desk becomes brighter against the windows. Snow continues to fall, though less wildly now, and the broken wires sway under their icy burden. Somewhere in the harbour, a horn sounds with its grave patience. It seems less like warning now, and more like a reminder that unseen systems continue to struggle. You help stack undelivered notes beside the ledger. They form a small, solemn pile. Each one wants to move. Each one must wait. In ordinary times, waiting feels like failure. Tonight, waiting is simply the shape endurance takes when wires are down, roads are blocked, and the sky has misplaced the city. The clerk sand downs a final line of ink, then closes the ledger with care. His fingers rest on the cover a moment longer than necessary. Around you, people settle into quieter positions, tired from listening for news that rarely comes. The stove ticks, the kettle sighs. The messages lie still in their piles, patient as sleeping birds. You lean near the desk and let your eyes soften. The storm has stripped communication to its oldest form. One person speaking, another remembering, another carrying the words through danger. The great modern city, tangled in broken wires and buried roots, has become intimate again. Not by choice, of course. New York rarely chooses intimacy. Yet here it is, whispering names beside a harbour hidden in snow. You stand near the harbour edge and look toward Brooklyn, though looking has become more an act of faith than eyesight. The East River lies somewhere beyond the veils of snow, restless between the two cities, carrying tides, broken reflections, hidden ice, and the muffled voices of ferries. Across that water, Brooklyn should rise with church towers, warehouses, homes and lamps. Tonight it is only a pale absence. The wind has softened slightly, but the air remains thick and white. Snow falls with a steadier patience now, less violent than the first fury, yet still determined. It settles on your shoulders and hat, quiet as dust in an unused room. The railing beneath your glove is rimed with ice. When you grip it, cold travels through the leather and into your palm. Somewhere upriver, the Brooklyn Bridge reaches through the storm. Its stone towers should be visible, mighty and Gothic, standing like gates between worlds. Instead, they appear and vanish in fragments, a dark vertical line, a suggestion of cable, a high shadow lost in white. The bridge is only 5 years old, still a marvel people discuss with wonder. Even marvels disappear in weather. You hear the river before you see it. Water slaps against pilings with dull, heavy sounds. Chunks of ice bump wood, scrape, drift, then vanish. A ferry whistle sounds from a slip, but it does not carry its usual confidence. It seems to ask a question. Another signal answers, thinned by snow and distance. Between them, the river breathes in black secrecy. The ferry house nearby is crowded with people who have not fully surrendered their plans. Travellers stand under the roofline, stamping snow from boots and shaking collars. Some carry valises, parcels, baskets, or wrapped bundles meant for households across the river. Others carry only impatience, which is lighter but somehow harder to put down. Their faces turn whenever a whistle sounds. A posted notice near the entrance is half covered with snow. Someone has wiped it clean with a sleeve, leaving streaks of wet ink at the edges. Service is delayed. Service is uncertain. Service may resume when conditions allow. Such language is official, cautious, and not especially comforting. It is the written equivalent of a shrug wearing a hat. You step inside the ferry waiting area. The room is dim, cold near the doors, warmer near the centre where bodies gather. The floor is gritty with snow tracked in by hundreds of feet. Benches are crowded. A coal stove smokes irritably in one corner, giving off heat and a faint smell of sulphur. Steam rises from coats. A baby cries in brief, exhausted bursts, then quiets against someone's shoulder. A man in a heavy overcoat insists he must reach Brooklyn for business. He repeats this several times, in case the river is impressed by commerce. A ferry employee listens with practiced calm. The employee's beard is wet with melted snow, and his eyes are red from wind. He says the pilots cannot see the slips properly. He says ice and current make the crossing dangerous. He does not add that drowning is bad for punctuality. The East River is not really a river in the gentle inland sense. It is a tidal strait, with currents that can twist and hurry according to tide, wind, and channel. In fair weather, ferries cross it constantly, binding Manhattan and Brooklyn together through work, family, trade, and habit. During the blizzard, those crossings became uncertain, dangerous, and sometimes impossible. You sit near a window rubbed clear by many sleeves. Outside, the ferry slips appear as dark frames under snow. Ropes hang stiff and heavy. Planks shine where ice is formed under trampling feet. Men move like shadows near the water, testing lines and speaking in gestures because wind steals ordinary speech. A lantern swings from a hook, casting amber light on flakes that whirl like ash. The Brooklyn Bridge has changed life around this water since its opening in 1883. It offers a fixed crossing where once ferries ruled without challenge. People have walked its promenade to admire the view, feeling suspended between cities, industry, and sky. Trains also use the bridge, carrying crowds above the river's old uncertainty. But tonight, even that grand span is humbled by snow, wind, crowding, and confusion. A rumour moves through the waiting room that people are walking the bridge despite the weather. Another says the bridge railway has stopped. A third says someone reached Brooklyn on foot by holding another person's coattail the entire way. This final version gains popularity immediately, perhaps because it offers both adventure and mild comedy. Anxiety often likes a funny hat. A quirky tidbit follows from an elderly woman with bright eyes and a shawl pinned tight. She says some bridge pedestrians once bought souvenir views from peddlers, then discovered the real view was mostly smoke and other pedestrians. Tonight, she adds, the view costs nothing and shows even less. Several people laugh softly. The bridge, like many miracles, has always had a practical side. You imagine walking it now. The climb would begin through wind between buildings, then rise into open air where snow attacks without obstruction. The wooden walkway would be slick. The cables would hum above, enormous and unseen. Beneath, the river would move in darkness. Lamps might appear as floating beads, while the towers loomed suddenly out of whiteness like patient giants. A young woman near you holds a small basket covered by cloth. She is trying to reach her mother in Brooklyn Heights. The basket contains medicine, oranges, and a knitted shawl. She lifts the cloth to check them, releasing a bright citrus smell into the damp room. For a moment, the scent is astonishingly cheerful. Oranges in a blizzard feel like sunlight smuggled through customs. She asks whether the bridge walkway is open. The ferry employee hesitates. He says some have crossed, but he cannot advise it. That is official speech for "Please do not make me imagine you vanishing in a drift." The young woman lowers the cloth and nods. She does not cry. Her face settles into the fixed patience people use when worry must stand upright in public. Nearby, two men compare routes. One says he knows a path to the bridge entrance. The other says knowing a path is not the same as finding it under 5 feet of drift. They discuss wind direction, lamps, stairways, police lines, and whether the snow is deeper near certain streets. Their conversation sounds like planning an expedition across a polar plateau, except the destination is someone's aunt in Brooklyn. Historians continue to debate how ordinary travellers judged risk during the storm, especially when they needed to cross between Manhattan and Brooklyn. Some accounts emphasize reckless attempts driven by work or family duty. Others suggest that many people acted cautiously, but faced poor information and changing conditions. Human beings are very good at making decisions with half a map and too much hope. A ferry bell rings suddenly, and everyone turns. The sound is not a promise, only a signal from the slip. Still, the room rises halfway in one shared motion. Men reach for hats. Women gather parcels. Children are lifted from benches. The ferry employee raises both hands and calls for calm. Calm, of course, is famously obedient in crowded transportation spaces. Through the window, a ferry shape emerges from snow near the dock. It is broad, dark, and coated white along its roof and railings. Steam curls from it, torn instantly sideways. Men on the slip move quickly, securing lines and clearing gangway boards. The vessel has not come to take everyone. It may be repositioning, sheltering, or attempting limited service. The difference matters greatly to people with wet feet. The waiting room fills with questions. Where is it going? Is it crossing? Can passengers board? How many? The employee gives no quick answer. He speaks with men from the slip, then returns with a face that makes the answer clear before words arrive. No general crossing. Conditions remain unsafe. A groan spreads through the room, low and weary, more tired than angry. The man with business protests again, but less forcefully. The young woman with oranges closes her eyes for one breath, then opens them. The elderly woman with the shawl says Brooklyn will not float away. Someone replies that in this weather, one should not tempt it. The room settles back down, though disappointment makes the benches harder. You step outside again, drawn toward the site of the bridge. Snow has eased enough for a momentary view. The nearest tower appears through the gloom, massive and spectral, its arches filled with drifting white. Cables descend from invisible heights, becoming lines of darkness against a colourless sky. The structure looks less like a machine than a frozen instrument waiting for hands. The bridge was a triumph of engineering and public imagination. It linked Manhattan and Brooklyn before the two became one city. Its construction demanded years of labour, daring, illness, political struggle, and enormous public fascination. In 1888, it still carried the aura of something nearly impossible made real. Yet the storm reminds every admirer that stone, steel, and wire still exist inside weather. You feel the bridge rather than merely see it. The wind hums across unseen cables. Snow taps your collar and slides into the seam of your glove. The river below gives off a cold, damp smell, mixed with coal smoke from ferries and nearby stacks. Your face aches. Your breath warms the scarf for a second, then turns it clammy. Across the water, Brooklyn remains hidden, close enough to love and too far to reach easily. A policeman near the approach urges people away from exposed places. He has been answering questions for hours, and patience hangs from him in thin strips. He says crossings are being controlled. He says conditions change by the minute. He says families should find shelter rather than crowd the entrances. His voice has the flat kindness of exhaustion. The boy asks whether the bridge can fall in snow. Several adults look up at once, despite themselves. The policeman says no, with more confidence than anyone expected. The boy asks whether Brooklyn can fall. The policeman pauses, then says not today. This satisfies the child. Adults nearby accept the answer for themselves, discreetly. You walk a short distance toward the approach, but stop where the wind opens its mouth wider. Snow races across the path in pale streams. Footprints vanish quickly. A group coming down from the direction of the bridge moves together, each person gripping the next by sleeve or elbow. Their hats and shoulders are white. Their eyes are narrowed to slits. One man laughs when he reaches the lee of a building, a laugh of relief rather than amusement. They report that the open stretches are bitter and difficult. The bridge deck is slippery. Visibility comes and goes. At times the tower appears suddenly, then disappears behind blowing snow. Yet they crossed. One woman says the worst part was not fear, but not knowing how far remained. Distance becomes cruel when landmarks vanish. The group disperses toward shelter, leaving deep, staggered tracks. Inside the ferry house, the stove has drawn a small circle of sleepers. The young woman with oranges now shares one with the crying child's mother. The peel releases a sharp, sweet fragrance that cuts through coal smoke and wet wool. People notice. Nobody asks for a piece, which is heroic in its own quiet way. The young woman tears one orange into segments and gives the child one. The child accepts with solemn dignity, as if receiving a medal. Juice shines on her fingers. The colour is almost shocking in the grey room. A ferry employee watches and smiles, then looks away quickly, perhaps to keep his authority from softening too much. Outside, the ferry whistle sounds again. But no crowd rises this time. People have learned the difference between a signal and a salvation. They listen, adjust shawls, pull coats tighter, and continue waiting. The river keeps its own schedule. Brooklyn remains a shape behind weather. You sit with your back against the wall and let the room's murmurs blend with the harbour sounds. Boots shift on gritty boards, the stove ticks, a bench creaks under sleeping weight. A distant horn calls from downriver, and the ferry answers with a shorter note. Snow taps the roof in a steady, sand-like whisper. Between Manhattan and Brooklyn, every crossing has become a negotiation with cold, current, machinery, courage, and common sense. The bridge stands above, impressive and shadowed. The ferries wait below, steaming softly in the slips. People carry baskets, letters, medicine, business papers, and stubborn affection, all temporarily halted by white air. You look again toward the hidden shore and imagine thousands of rooms across the river, each with its own stove, window, worry, and waiting listener. The cities are separated tonight not by distance alone, but by uncertainty, yet the sound of horns travels across what sight cannot cross. It moves from water to wall, from slip to shelter, from one anxious heart to another. Snow continues to fall on both sides alike. It settles on bridge cables, ferry roofs, warehouse ledges, church steps, and the hats of people who refuse to stop hoping. You close your eyes near the ferry house window, and the East River becomes a dark breath between two sleeping cities, held together by bells, whistles, and the quiet patience of those who wait. You follow the first lantern because it is easier than following courage. Courage is invisible, slippery, and often makes poor decisions when left unsupervised. A lantern, at least, gives a small amber circle on the snow. It swings from the hand of a man who knows the waterfront lanes well enough to mistrust them tonight. The storm has thinned into a restless curtain, but darkness has thickened in its place. Snow still falls, drifting down in fine, steady grains that glitter when the flame catches them. The wind comes in sudden pushes between buildings. It lifts powder from drifts and throws it into your face, then leaves you blinking in the cold. Your cheeks sting. Your breath rasps softly inside your scarf. A call has come from a nearby street, carried by a boy sent from door to door. An older woman is trapped in a lodging house where snow has blocked the entrance and part of the rear passage. She is not alone, but the people inside have little fuel and less patience. Someone must dig the doorway clear. Someone must check the coal bin. Someone must make sure the roof shed is not sagging too badly under snow. So you go with the lantern party. That sounds grand. Lantern party. Almost festive. In truth, it is 4 tired adults, 1 shovel with a cracked handle, a coil of rope, and a great deal of muttering. The night watchman leads, the ferry employee follows. You carry a second lantern, shielding its glass with your gloved hand. A seamstress comes too, because the trapped woman is known to her. The street is nearly unrecognizable. Drifts rise in strange shapes, moulded by wind around stoops, barrels, hitching posts, and abandoned wagons. Some slopes gleam smooth and inviting, others collapse without warning beneath a boot. The snow has different textures, and you are learning them through your knees. Powder whispers, crust snaps, packed snow grunts when the shovel bites it. The air smells quieter than the city ought to smell. Coal smoke lingers low and bitter. Beneath it, there is salt from the harbour, faint manure from buried street traffic, wet wood, and the cold, clean scent of falling snow. Somewhere, a kitchen fire sends out a momentary fragrance of fried onions. It vanishes at once, which seems unfair. At the corner, the watchman ties the rope around an iron railing and passes the line back. Each person takes hold. The rope is stiff with frost and rough against your glove. It keeps you connected in the moving dark, where the next building can vanish behind one hard gust. You feel each tug from the others as a wordless message. Stop. Move. Careful. Wait. A mainstream historical fact lives in these small motions. During the blizzard, police officers, firemen, workers, neighbours, and ordinary pedestrians performed rescues and welfare checks across the affected cities. Many efforts were informal, local, and poorly recorded. The storm was too large for any single organised response, so survival often depended on whoever happened to be nearby with a shovel, a lantern, or a stubborn conscience. You reach the lodging house by recognising a crooked sign above the door. Only half the sign is visible, and the painted letters have blurred under crusted snow. The entrance below it is sealed by a drift that reaches above the latch. Snow has packed itself against the door with rude determination. A small face appears at an upper window, then disappears. A moment later, someone pounds from inside. The seamstress steps close to the window and calls up. Her voice is firm, carrying through the storm. The answering voice is muffled by glass and weather, but alive. That is the first good news. The watchman begins to shovel. The ferry employee uses a board to cut blocks from the drift. You hold the lantern low so they can see where the doorframe begins. Snow reflects the light upward, giving everyone amber chins and tired eyes. The work is slow. The drift is packed hard at the surface and loose beneath, which makes it fall back into the space just cleared. Your hands ache from holding the lantern steady. The seamstress takes the cracked shovel when the watchman pauses to breathe. She drives it into the snow with controlled anger. It is impressive. Nobody offers advice, showing rare wisdom. A quirky tidbit comes from the ferry employee as he chops at the drift. He says some New Yorkers believed a little whiskey rubbed on frozen feet could help. The watchman grunts that a little whiskey placed inside the owner worked faster, though not necessarily better. Medical science would have questions. The men grin, and the seamstress tells them to dig before they begin treating the snowbank. At last, the shovel strikes wood. The sound is dull but promising. More snow is cleared from the lower hinge, then the latch side. The door still will not open. Packed snow has jammed the bottom from inside and outside, and the wood may have swollen with damp. The watchman sets his shoulder against it. Once. Twice. The third time, the door gives a groan that sounds almost offended. Cold air and indoor breath rush together. Faces appear in the gap. A lamp glows behind them. The people inside are pale, tired, and wrapped in shawls, coats, quilts, and whatever else could be found. The older woman sits in a chair near the hallway, her feet wrapped in cloth. She complains immediately that everyone is making a fuss. This reassures the seamstress more than gratitude would have done. You help clear the passage wider. Snow spills over your boots. The hallway smells of damp plaster, lamp oil, cabbage, old blankets, and human closeness. A child inside holds a cracked cup in both hands. A man with a grey beard says the coal scuttle is nearly empty. The watchman asks where the coal is kept. The answer sends everyone toward the rear, where another drift blocks the yard door. The rear passage is darker and narrower. Your lantern flame bends whenever the wind sneaks through cracks. The walls feel damp enough to sweat. From somewhere overhead comes a creak under the weight of snow on roof and gutter. Everyone looks up, then looks away, because staring at a ceiling rarely improves its manners. Historians still argue about how many deaths during the blizzard came from direct exposure, accidents, exhaustion, fires, and delayed medical care. Record keeping was uneven, and reports varied by city and newspaper. What remains clear is that danger often arrived quietly. A blocked door, an empty coal bin, a missed doctor, or a wrong turn in white air could matter as much as any dramatic disaster. The yard door is opened only after the lower panels are cleared with a fire poker and shovel blade. Outside, the small yard has filled like a bowl. The coal bin stands under a lean roof, half buried but reachable. The coal inside is damp at the top, dry beneath. You pass chunks hand to hand in a bucket line. black lumps leaving dust on gloves and cuffs. The smell is sharp, earthy, and grimly comforting. When the first coal reaches the stove, the room changes. Not immediately, and not magically, but with the promise of heat returning. The older woman in the chair complains that the stove has always been temperamental. Someone says it has chosen a fine night for personality. A small flame catches. Smoke hesitates, then finds the flue. The room's shoulders lower. You notice small rescues everywhere now. A neighbour brings a blanket from across the hall. A boy melts snow in a pot for washing. The seamstress checks the older woman's wrapped feet and scolds her for sitting too near a draught. The watchman clears the outer step again, knowing the wind will partly fill it by morning. He does the work anyway. Civilization is often repetitive. A roomer arrives with another helper at the door. He says a man was found standing asleep in a drift near a warehouse, still holding a parcel under one arm. Someone else says a policeman carried 3 children across an avenue in a flour sack. The flour sack detail is challenged immediately. A basket, perhaps. A shawl, perhaps. The story refuses to settle. Rumours in a blizzard behave like smoke. The older woman says she heard a cow wandered loose near a market and was led to shelter in a church vestibule. This may be nonsense. It may also be the kind of thing that happens when a city is turned upside down by weather. Everyone pauses to imagine a cow standing beneath stained glass, blinking politely at theology. The image improves morale considerably. You leave the lodging house once the fire is steady and the entrance passable. The older woman thanks nobody directly, which seems to be her personal constitution. She does, however, press a wrapped biscuit into the seamstress's hand. The biscuit is hard, slightly stale, and honoured like treasure. The seamstress breaks it outside and shares it. It tastes of flour, salt, and smoky kitchen air. The lantern party moves on. Another call has come from a stable where a roof gutter has fallen, blocking the side door. The horses inside are safe but restless. When you enter, the warmth and smell strike you at once. Hay, manure, leather, damp horsehide, oats, and sweet steam from animal breath. After the cold street, the stable feels almost tropical, though only a horse would call it comfortable. The animals shift in their stalls, eyes glossy in lantern light. One nickers softly, another stamps, sending straw rustling under hoof. The stableman has been awake too long, and speaks to each horse by name with a tenderness he would deny in court. Snow presses against the blocked door outside. Together, you clear enough space to open it, then brace the damaged gutter with a plank. The stableman says one mare refused water until he warmed the bucket near the stove. The ferry employee says even horses have standards. The mare snorts, perhaps in agreement. You stroke her neck with a gloved hand. Her coat is warm, slightly damp, and alive beneath your palm. The sensation moves through you like a quiet blessing. Across the street, a lantern appears at an upper window and waves twice. Not distress. Thanks. The watchman waves back once. This is how the night communicates now. Horns, bells, shouts, ropes, lanterns, and small gestures through snow. The broken wires above the streets are useless, but light still travels where it can. The next errand is not rescue exactly. It is guidance. A doctor has reached the edge of the district and needs help finding a building near the waterfront. His patient is not in immediate danger, people say, which means someone is worried enough to send for a doctor during a blizzard. You meet him near a lamppost crusted white from base to crown. His bag is wrapped in cloth. His moustache is frozen at one corner. He asks whether a certain alley is passable. The watchman laughs once, without humour. Passable is a philosophical word tonight. The group leads him by a route through a warehouse yard, along a wall, over a drift, through a half-cleared passage, and under an awning sagging with snow. You hold the lantern while he climbs, his boots slipping. He mutters that medicine did not train him for mountaineering in Manhattan. At the patient's building, a woman opens the door with such relief that everyone becomes quiet. The doctor steps inside, shaking snow from his sleeves. You do not follow. Privacy has its own warmth. The woman thanks the group, then closes the door softly. A lamp burns behind the curtain. That is enough. By now the storm has entered your body as fatigue, your legs are heavy, your shoulders ache from lifting, holding, bracing, and pushing. Your face feels both numb and raw. Snow has found the back of your neck again, because snow is persistent and frankly intrusive. Still, every lantern you pass seems to answer the last. Stitching the buried streets together, you return toward shelter through a path made by many feet. It twists where drifts forced compromise. It dips where shovels found lower ground. It rises over buried steps, curb edges, and forgotten crates. The city beneath remains present, but only as memory under snow. Above it, temporary routes glow in lamplight. At a corner, the watchman stops and lifts his lantern high. In response, another lantern far down the street lifts and circles once. All well, perhaps. Need help, perhaps. Come this way, perhaps. The signal is imperfect, but it is human. The watchman waits, then sees no second call. He lowers the light. The harbour sends a deep horn across the neighbourhood. Its note passes over roofs, drifts, broken wires, and exhausted helpers. The sound is not lonely now. It feels answered by every little flame in every window and hand. The city is still wounded by snow, but it is not abandoned. You enter the warm room with boots full of cold and pockets full of small stories. A blocked door opened. Coal carried. Horses calmed. A doctor guided. An old woman complaining, therefore very much alive. These are not grand victories for marble monuments. They are better suited to quiet memory. Near the stove, someone takes your lantern and wipes the glass clean. The flame steadies, bright and small. You sit, feeling warmth return slowly through damp wool and aching fingers. Outside, rumours continue to wander. Some true, some embroidered, all searching for listeners. Inside, the room receives each one gently, then lets it settle beside the fire. Snow falls against the windows with a softer sound now. The night remains uncertain, but it is filled with helpers, signals, and stubborn lights. You close your eyes and see lanterns moving through white streets, each one making a small promise that someone is still looking, still listening, still coming when called. You wake to a silence so wide that it feels almost theatrical. The storm has not vanished, not entirely, but its great roar has lowered into a tired murmur. Snow still drifts from roof edges and window ledges in soft, sudden slides. The air no longer hurls itself against the walls. Instead, it waits, pale and heavy, as if the whole city is holding a breath it has borrowed from the harbour. The room is filled with sleeping shapes. People rest in chairs, on benches, on folded sacks, and against walls where fatigue has placed them carefully. A boot lies on its side near the stove. A glove hangs from a chair back, stiff and curled like a sleeping animal. The lamp has burned low, leaving a honey-coloured pool of light across the table and ledger. Your mouth tastes of coal smoke and stale coffee. Your clothes feel creased, damp at the cuffs, and warmed only where the stove can reach. When you sit up, your shoulders remind you of every shove, lift, and frozen rope. The floorboards creak beneath your boots. A man near the door stirs but does not wake. Even worry is exhausted. You cross to the window and rub a circle through the frost. The view is startling. Snow has transformed the street into a white valley. Doorways are half buried. Wagons have become rounded mounds, with hints of wheels and shafts beneath. The gas lamp outside rises from the drift like a strange iron plant. Above, wires sag, broken in places, glazed with ice that catches the weak daylight. The sky is a flat winter grey. It gives little warmth and fewer promises. Yet there is light enough to see the scale of what has happened. New York has not merely been snowed upon, it has been rearranged. The storm has softened edges, erased boundaries, and raised the ground to unfamiliar heights. A city famous for vertical ambition now seems impressed by horizontal accumulation. You step outside with others who have woken into the same stunned curiosity. The first breath hurts your nose. The air smells cleaner than expected, scrubbed by snow. But coal smoke soon returns beneath it. Salt rides in from the harbour. So does the damp odour of disturbed river mud, wet timber, and tar. Somewhere a horse snorts, muffled inside a stable, sounding offended by the entire arrangement. The street is bright enough to make your eyes water. Every surface reflects the pale sky. Boots crunch into crust, then sink into softer layers below. The snow has settled unevenly, scoured thin near some corners, and piled high against walls. In places, drifts reach second-story windows. People lean from those windows and look down, as if from balconies in a mountain village. Manhattan has acquired altitude without permission. A mainstream historical fact stands plainly in this buried scene. The Great Blizzard of 1888 brought New York City and much of the northeastern region to a halt for days. Snowfall was deep, winds were fierce, and drifts became enormous. Transportation, communication, business, and daily routines were disrupted on a scale that entered public memory almost immediately. The city counted losses in lives, wages, time, cargo, and confidence. Counting begins quietly. A shopkeeper digs toward his doorway and calls out that his front glass survived. A baker checks fuel and flour. The stableman leads one horse into the open path for air. Men inspect rooflines, awnings, chimneys, and signs. Women carry pails of water where pumps are reachable. Children appear at windows with faces bright from fascination, because disaster at a safe distance looks suspiciously like adventure. Down the street, a group has begun cutting a path toward the harbour. They work in a line, passing shovels when arms tire. Snow is lifted, thrown, and lifted again. The rhythm is slower than the storm, but steadier. The scrape of shovel blades replaces the roar of wind. It is a practical morning hymn, performed by people with sore backs and no printed music. You join the path for a while. The shovel handle is slick beneath your gloves. Packed snow breaks in slabs. Powder spills into your boot tops. Your breath comes harder with each lift, clouding around your scarf. The work warms your chest but freezes your fingers. Each cleared stretch reveals cobbles beneath, dark and wet, like fragments of a city excavated from an ancient site. A man jokes that archaeologists will one day discover New York under here and wonder why everyone was in such a hurry. Another replies that they will find unpaid bills and understand immediately. The jokes are weary, but they help. Laughter moves differently in cold air. It comes out small, visible, and quickly gone. When the path reaches the harbour side, the view opens in a way that makes everyone fall silent. The water is visible at last, though not clearly. It lies dark beneath floating snow, with ice and slush moving along the edges. Piers wear thick white caps, ropes hang frozen and swollen, barges rest at awkward angles where snow weight and shifting water have troubled their balance. Masts stand like black needles stitched into grey sky. The harbour is quieter than it should be. Fewer whistles, fewer calls, fewer wheels and hooves behind the warehouses. Commerce has paused. Not politely, but because it has been physically pinned. Some vessels sit coated in snow from deck to rail. Others show signs of urgent work. Cleared hatches, hacked railings, footprints crossing planks, fresh lines secured over old ones. The storm's handprint is everywhere. A tugboat sends up steam, thin and white against the low sky. Its crew moves carefully along the deck, breaking ice from fittings and checking lines. The sound of their tools carries across the water. Chip, clink, scrape. A ferry remains in its slip, dark windows reflecting snow. One lamp burns inside, astonishingly ordinary. You imagine someone within sweeping the deck, because life returns first through chores. A harbour official, or a man acting with official confidence, stands near a ledger held under his coat. He asks captains, dock foremen, and workers for reports. Damaged lines, delayed cargo, stranded passengers, spoiled goods, vessels missing from expected berths. Each answer is written down with numbed fingers. Paper curls in the damp air. Ink thickens in the cold. The count is incomplete and will remain so for some time. The storm has scattered facts as thoroughly as it scattered snow. Some news will arrive by runner, some by recovered telegraph, some by crews coming ashore when conditions permit. Some losses will be known only when a warehouse is opened, a cargo inspected, a family reunited, or a body found beneath a drift. The morning is not cruelly loud. It is quietly serious. A quirky tidbit rises among the workers inspecting the piers. One man claims that snow packed so deeply against certain doors that people inside began using upper windows as front entrances. This is not as fanciful as it sounds. Across the city, deep drifts turned ordinary architecture into puzzles. Steps led nowhere, windows became doors, and doors became walls. The city learned temporary manners from a snowbank. You see such a window entrance nearby. A young man climbs carefully from a second-floor window onto a drift sloping down toward the street. He holds a parcel above his head, then slides 3 feet and lands sitting upright. The parcel survives, his pride does not. A woman at the window tells him to come back for another bundle. The watchers applaud gently. He bows from the snow, because humiliation should be used promptly. The harbour air grows busier by degrees. Not busy in the old sense, never that. But men gather near slips, checking planks and ladders. A police officer speaks with a dock foreman. 2 boys carry a bucket of coal toward a small office. A woman brings coffee in a covered pot, holding it close beneath her shawl. The smell reaches you in a warm, bitter wave, and several heads turn with almost religious feeling. Historians still argue whether the blizzard should be remembered mainly as a natural disaster, an infrastructure lesson, or a social test of urban resilience. Each view catches part of the truth. The weather was extreme, certainly. The systems were vulnerable, clearly. The people, meanwhile, revealed both generosity and self-interest, wisdom and foolishness, endurance and complaint. In other words, they behaved very much like people. The first newspapers that can be obtained are eagerly passed from hand to hand, though many are late, incomplete, or locally focused. You see men scanning columns for railway notices, death reports, harbour damage, and any hint of normal service returning. The paper feels damp and fragile in the cold. Ink smudges one reader's thumb. He does not notice. News has become warmer than gloves. A story circulates of a funeral delayed by snow. Another tells of office workers sleeping on desks. Another concerns a milk wagon abandoned beneath a drift, its bottles found later like chilled treasure. Some accounts are tragic, some comic, some merely inconvenient. The storm has given everyone a tale, and very few people the energy to tell it well yet. Embellishment can wait until toes thaw. You walk along the waterfront path, placing each step carefully. The boards are slick where snow has been trampled into ice. Your hand brushes a piling, and frozen tar flakes under your glove. The water below knocks softly, almost apologetically, against timber. A gull appears overhead, crying once in the grey air. The sound is thin, sharp, and wonderfully normal. At one pier, several men lift snow from the deck of a small cargo vessel. They work with shovels, brooms, and boards, pushing the weight toward the side. The snow falls into the harbour in heavy clumps, splashing dark water onto the hull. One man complains that he never thought he would shovel a boat. Another says a boat is only a street with worse manners. This is accepted as maritime wisdom. Cargo checks begin slowly. Barrels are tapped and inspected. Canvas coverings are shaken free of snow. Crates are pried from icy corners. Men worry about spoiled perishables, delayed coal, damaged produce, and goods trapped in rail depots. The harbour does not exist alone. It feeds shops, kitchens, factories, and markets. When it pauses, the pause travels inland through cupboards and pay envelopes. You notice how many people simply stand for a moment and stare. Not idly, not lazily, they are measuring. A city must understand its wound before it can bind it. Eyes travel from drift to wire, from pier to roof, from stranded vehicle to blocked door. Some faces show awe, some show calculation, some show grief. Some show the familiar New York expression that says this is outrageous and someone should be billed. Near a cleared doorway, the older woman from the lodging house sits wrapped in blankets on a chair set just inside the entrance. She has insisted on seeing the street. According to the seamstress standing nearby, the older woman declares that the snow is impressive but badly placed. She asks whether the harbour is still there. The seamstress says yes. The older woman nods, satisfied, as if personally maintaining continuity. You are handed a cup of coffee, thinner than ideal but hot enough to matter. The cup warms your palms and steam curls against your face. You drink slowly. The taste is bitter, smoky, and slightly metallic from the pot. Around you, the harbour begins to answer itself with tools, voices, hoofbeats, and the slow scrape of recovery. A horse-drawn cart attempts movement along the newly cut path. The horse steps high, nostrils wide, breath steaming. Men walk beside the wheels, ready to push or steady. The cart carries coal sacks, precious as treasure chests. Every building needs heat. Every stove needs fuel. The wheels groan through the ruts, and people cheer softly when the cart passes the worst drift. It is not a parade. It feels like one. The sun does not appear, but the sky brightens a little more. Snow on rooftops begins to loosen in places, sliding with soft thumps into alleys and yards. Water drips from eaves where heat escapes from upper rooms. Icicles form along signs and awnings. The storm's grip is changing shape, from falling danger to heavy burden. The city must now dig, thaw, mend, and mourn. You stand at the harbour rail and listen. The foghorns are fewer now, but one sounds far out in the grey, slow and resonant. It no longer seems lost. It seems to be taking attendance. Here, says the horn. Still here. The water answers with small slaps against wood. A tug whistle gives a short reply. Somewhere behind you, a shovel strikes stone, and someone laughs from relief. The city is not restored. Streets remain blocked. Wires remain down. Families remain separated. Work remains interrupted. Yet motion has returned in small, stubborn pieces. A shovel lifted, a rope checked, a door opened, a horse led forward, a kettle refilled, a name written in a ledger. Recovery begins without ceremony, because ceremony would have to be dug out first. You look across the buried waterfront, and the morning feels both vast and intimate. Vast in its damage, intimate in its details. Snow on a child's cap, coal dust on a clerk's cuff, ice on a ship's line, coffee steam rising between tired hands. New York Harbour lies wounded under winter light, but not silent now. It is counting itself back into the world. You turn from the rail and follow the cleared path toward warmth, carrying the image of the harbour in your mind. Dark water under grey sky, white piers, black masts, slow steam, and people moving carefully through a city that has learned, for one morning, to step gently. You remain beside the harbour as the storm's great white weight begins to change its nature. Snow no longer falls with command. It loosens from ledges, slides from roofs, and drops from rigging in soft, sudden bursts. The city has not escaped winter, not yet, but the blizzard has stopped arriving and started becoming memory. That is a strange turning, and you feel it in the air. The thaw begins modestly, a drip from an awning, a dark line along a cart track, a wet shine on cobbles where shovels have reached stone. Water gathers in shallow pockets, reflecting grey sky and broken wires. The snowbanks remain enormous, packed and stubborn, but their edges grow ragged. They look less like walls now and more like tired beasts lying down across the streets. The harbour smells different under thaw. Cold salt remains, but now it mingles with wet ash, exposed mud, soaked wood, horse manure, and the sour odour of snow that has absorbed too much city. Clean whiteness was never going to last long here. New York has talents. Preserving purity is not one of them. Still, there is something tender in the damp air, as if the city is unwrapping itself slowly. You walk along the cleared path near the piers, where men continue widening passages through drifts. Their shovels strike with dull rhythm, slower than urgency but steadier than despair. The snow is heavier now, wet and clinging. Each lifted load weighs more than it should. Shoulders roll, backs bend, gloves darken with meltwater. The work has shifted from survival toward restoration, which is less dramatic and almost always more exhausting. A wagon passes carrying broken planks, rope coils, and 2 cracked barrels. Its wheels chew through slush, sending grey spray over the path. The horse pulls carefully, ears flicking beneath a damp blanket. Steam rises from its body into the raw air. The driver clicks his tongue and speaks gently, as though negotiating with both animal and street. The street, to its credit, remains difficult. Near one warehouse, clerks have set up a table to sort delayed bills, cargo lists, and harbour notices. Paper lies under stones to keep the wind from stealing it. Ink runs where droplets fall from an awning. A man curses softly at a blurred number, then rewrites it with solemn care. Commerce is returning by inches, one damp page at a time. Heroic? Not exactly. Necessary? Absolutely. A mainstream historical fact settles into the thawing streets. The blizzard strengthened public demands for more resilient urban systems, especially underground telegraph and telephone wires, improved transit planning, and better emergency response. The storm became a lesson repeated in newspapers, public meetings, engineering discussions, and family stories. New York did not transform overnight, because cities enjoy taking their time while denying it, but the pressure for reform gained force. You see why. Overhead wires still hang, broken in several places, draped across roofs and poles like exhausted vines. Repair crews move carefully with ladders, tools, and cautious expressions. Some wires are dead, some perhaps not, and no one wants a surprise from modernity. Men call instructions upward while others steady the ladder feet in slush. The air smells of wet wood, metal, soot, and thawing insulation. A boy watches them from a safe distance, asking whether messages will soon fly again. One repairman answers that messages do not fly, they travel by current. The boy says that sounds like flying for lazy people. The repairman considers this, then says the boy may have a future in public speaking. Even the wires seem less tragic when a child insults them properly. At the ferry slips, movement returns in cautious stages. A ferry crew clears snow from the deck, pushing it in heavy sheets toward the side. The snow hits water with soft, final splashes. Men test the gangway, scrape ice from hinges, and examine ropes. Passengers wait behind a barrier, fewer than before, quieter now, watching every small preparation with the intensity usually reserved for theatre, elections, and fresh bread. The first limited crossing feels less like normal service and more like a ceremony arranged by practical men who dislike ceremonies. The ferry bell rings. Steam rises. A line is handled. People step carefully aboard, one by one, gripping rails slick with melt. No one cheers loudly. The river is still cold, the current still strong, and dignity has taken bruises. Yet when the ferry pulls away, heads turn to follow it through the grey. Brooklyn appears at last in broken shapes across the water. Rooflines, tower tips, warehouse fronts, and smoke columns emerge from the lifting murk. The sight is ordinary and deeply comforting. A woman beside you presses one hand to her mouth. Another person says, "There it is," as if Brooklyn had briefly misplaced itself. The ferry moves steadily, dark against pale slush and rippling water. A quirky tidbit makes its way through the waiting crowd. Some people are already saving pieces of storm snow in jars, or joking that they should, as if a household shelf could preserve the day New York stopped. Whether anyone truly kept such a souvenir is uncertain, but the impulse is believable. Humans love bottling the impossible. Then we label it badly and forget where we put it. The thaw uncovers objects with comic timing. A hat appears on a drift ledge, flattened but recognizable. A street sign emerges from a snowbank as if rising from the grave. Several milk bottles are found chilled and unbroken inside an abandoned crate. One boy discovers a lost boot and announces it with the gravity of an archaeologist uncovering an empire. No matching boot is found, which improves the mystery. The city also uncovers sorrow. Names are checked against shelter lists. Families search offices, stations, hospitals, police precincts, ferry houses, and boarding rooms. A man waits near a telegraph office for confirmation from relatives outside the city. A woman asks every passerby whether trains north have resumed. Not every story closes neatly. Some remain suspended for days, carried in whispers, notices, and exhausted hope. Historians still argue whether the blizzard's deepest legacy belongs to engineering, politics, memory, or mythology. The practical changes were real, but so were the stories that grew around the event. People remembered tunnels of snow, silent trains, frozen ships, brave neighbours, foolish errands, and impossible drifts. Memory, like wind, piles certain details higher than others. You walk toward the bridge approach as the sky brightens behind thin cloud. The great cables are visible now, dark and sweeping, still webbed with snow in places. The stone towers stand firm, their arches damp and shadowed. Traffic is not fully restored, but the structure no longer seems spectral. It belongs again to stone, steel, workers, rules, and footsteps. The miracle has returned to being infrastructure. That is its daily disguise. From the promenade entrance, you watch a few pedestrians pass under supervision. They move slowly, boots slipping now and then on wet boards. The view opens in fragments. East River water, ferry smoke, white rooftops, dark masts, and the harbour widening toward the bay. The city looks battered, but also strangely washed. Soot will return, noise will return, confidence will certainly return, possibly before wisdom has finished speaking. Near a cleared bench, an elderly man tells two younger workers how storms used to be worse when he was a boy. This is almost certainly false in the traditional manner of elderly men everywhere. The younger workers nod respectfully while exchanging one careful glance. He continues, warming to the subject, claiming snow once reached the second floor of a church and required parishioners to enter through the choir loft. Nobody believes him. Everyone enjoys him. You return to the waterfront where cargo begins moving in small amounts. A crate of oranges is carried from a warehouse into a wagon. The bright fruit glows through a torn covering, impossibly cheerful against grey slush. You remember the scent of citrus in a waiting room and feel how strongly a small colour can survive a great storm. An orange is not a rescue plan. Sometimes it feels close. A dock foreman checks a list, then crosses out one delayed delivery with a firm stroke. His pencil leaves a dark groove in damp paper. Around him, men lift, drag, count, and argue mildly. Their voices are hoarse from cold and long use. The harbour does not spring awake. It creaks awake. It groans, clears its throat, tests its joints, and decides to continue. Steam whistles grow more frequent during the afternoon. Their tones no longer sound panicked or lost. They mark departures, signals, shifting vessels, and work resumed. Foghorns still speak now and then from the bay, but their calls seem wider, less trapped. The air carries sound more clearly as the snowfall ends. What had been hidden begins to place itself back on the map. A group of men clears a final ridge from a pier entrance, exposing the boards beneath. The wood is dark, wet, and scarred. One man removes his hat and wipes his brow with a sleeve, despite the cold. Another leans on a shovel and looks at the cleared way as if admiring a cathedral. This is understandable. A path is sacred when you have earned it, one wet shovelful at a time. You pause near the water and place your gloved hand on a post. The wood is damp, rough, and cold, smelling of tar and brine. Beneath you, the harbour moves with its old patient strength. Snowmelt drips from ropes into the tide. Ice turns slowly near the pilings. A gull lands on a crate, shakes itself, and lets out a sharp complaint. Life returns first as criticism. The city's official lessons will take longer. Engineers will write reports. Officials will argue over budgets, permissions, and responsibilities. Companies will defend old arrangements until new ones become unavoidable. Transit planners will consider ways to reduce weather paralysis. Wires will be buried more widely. Emergency services will adapt. The blizzard becomes not only a story of snow, but a case made in cold water, broken cable, and stalled wheels. Yet beyond formal lessons, another memory forms among ordinary people. The memory of being guided by rope through a white street. The memory of sharing soup with strangers. The memory of hearing horns from invisible vessels. The memory of waking to a city buried so completely that doors forgot their purpose. These memories will be retold at tables, in offices, on ferry decks, and beside stoves during milder storms. You can almost hear future voices already. "I was there," someone will say. "The drifts were higher than a man. The trains stopped like toys. The harbour vanished. We slept in offices. We crossed by lantern. We dug until our backs burned." Of course, some drifts will grow taller with age. That is permitted. Snow in memory has excellent posture. Evening approaches with a softer chill. The sky turns pearl grey, then lavender over the harbour. Lamps are lit along the waterfront, their reflections trembling in meltwater puddles and broken channels of slush. The first stars remain hidden, but the darkness no longer feels like a sealed room. It feels open again, cold and breathable. You stand at the edge of New York Harbour and listen as the foghorns fade into their usual distance. They are still there, but no longer the only thread connecting hidden lives. Voices carry, wheels move, ferry bells ring. A horse shakes its harness. A shovel drops against a wall. Somewhere, a kettle whistles through an open window, and the sound is so ordinary that it feels like mercy. The snowbanks remain, glowing faintly under lamplight. They will shrink, darken, collapse, and leave behind rubbish, puddles, damaged goods, and stories. The harbour will regain its noise. The streets will regain their hurry. People will complain about delays, prices, mud, thaw, and probably the quality of the coffee. This, too, is recovery. Now the night lowers gently over the thawing city. You let your breath slow as the harbour breathes with you. The water moves under the piers in small, dark folds, touching wood, stone, ice, and rope with the same patient rhythm. Snow slides from a roof in the distance, landing with a muffled sigh. Then quiet returns. You walk back toward warmth, not quickly, only steadily. The path is uneven beneath your boots, but it is a path. Lamps glow behind windows. People speak softly in rooms where clothes dry beside stoves and kettles steam on black iron. The cold remains outside, but it no longer owns every thought. It has become part of the night's furniture, familiar and fading. Your hands remember the rough rope. Your ears remember the hidden horns. Your eyes remember the harbour buried under white air. Yet those memories loosen now, like snow softening along a windowsill. They do not disappear. They simply settle. They become quieter, easier to carry. The harbour lamps blur in the damp evening. Each one makes a small golden circle in the mist. Beyond them, the water opens toward the bay, and beyond the bay lies a wider darkness that asks nothing from you. The city behind you grows drowsy, floor by floor, room by room. Even New York, noisy old New York can close its eyes for a little while. You rest in that softened hush. The stove is warm. The blanket is near. The last foghorn sounds far away, slow and low, then fades across the water. Snowmelt drips from the eaves in gentle time. Somewhere, a horse shifts in straw. Somewhere, a child turns in sleep. Somewhere, a ship keeps its lamp burning. Let the harbour keep watch now. Let the bridge stand quiet in the dark. Let the streets remember their names beneath the snow. You have walked through the white silence, heard the hidden water, and felt the city return by small, stubborn acts. There is nothing more to carry tonight. The room grows still around you. Your breathing settles into the slow rhythm of tide against timber. The lamps outside soften into pale stars behind the glass. The storm becomes distance. The harbour becomes lullaby. And the last sound you follow is not thunder, not wind, not worry, but a fading foghorn, gentle as a dream moving out across dark water. Sleep well.